Chapter 1444. And Lin looked at the fragrant medicine that Su Xiaolan had brought over. I'm severely injured, so I can't drink it myself. I need you to feed me. Su Xiaolan chuckled. Look at you. Fine, I'll feed you. She took out a spoon and fed the medicine into Lin's mouth mouthful by mouthful. Lin felt warm all over as he drank the medicine. He sighed in his heart. This was such a wonderful life. The previous battle was like hell, and he didn't want to go through it a second time. He finished the medicine and was about to lie down comfortably. All of a sudden, an intense discomfort came from his body. First, there was a sharp pain in his stomach. Then, he felt like his skin was being torn apart. The pain seeped into his bones and spread to his soul. It felt like his soul was going to be torn apart and destroyed along with it. And Lin screamed in agony. And Lin, how are you feeling? Su Xiaolan looked at Lin and asked with a smile. And Lin was dumbfounded when he saw the sinister smile on Su Xiaolan's face. Then, a conjecture that he didn't dare to believe came to his mind. Xiaolan, could it be that your medicine... And Lin's lips trembled as he exclaimed, I did it. Does it taste good? A cold smile appeared on Su Xiaolan's face as she lifted Lin's chin with a slender, pristine finger. She seemed to be entranced by Lin's pained expression. Why? Why did you do this? I don't believe it. And Lin's heart ached. It was 1,000 times more painful than the pain he was feeling on his body. Su Xiaolan smiled. Why? Don't you know why I did this? And Lin was at a complete loss. He really didn't know why this was happening. Su Xiaolan didn't wait for Lin to speak. She said bitterly, the Empress of the Shui clan hugged you. Why do you think I did that? And Lin's eyes widened. Su Xiaolan laughed with a sickly face. Men like you who are fickle, and abandoned should die. Suddenly, an immense pain surged through Lin's body, as if every inch of his skin was about to be torn apart. And Lin's entire body convulsed, and he foamed at the mouth. The pain instantly reached its peak. His legs kicked, his eyes rolled back, and he breathed his last. And Lin dead, in a deep sea of consciousness, in absolute darkness. A gentle voice rang in his ears. And Lin. And Lin opened his eyes and was dazed by the warm candlelight. So he didn't die? That's great. It was just a false alarm. He saw a woman sitting quietly beside him with a gentle smile on her face. The woman was very happy. You're finally awake. Are you feeling better now, Xiaolan? I just had a nightmare. And Lin was a little frightened. Don't be afraid. It was just a dream. I'm here with you. Su Xiaolan hugged Lin lightly, as if trying to reassure him. And Lin was indeed less panicked as he basked in the warmth of her embrace. It's so good to have you by my side. And Lin sighed. You're still injured, so take care of yourself. Su Xiaolan patted Lin's back and stood up. She brought a bowl over from the table with a vibrant smile. Come, and Lin, drink your medicine. And Lin. The memories flooded him like a tide, causing him to suck in a deep breath of cold air, and his body trembled. He stared blankly at the spirit medicine in Su Xiaolan's hand and panicked. What was going on? What was going on? Was that a dream? Was it real now? And Lin's mind was in a mess, and he was thinking about many things. What's wrong, Lin? You don't look well, Su Xiaolan said with concern. And Lin looked at Su Xiaolan with some fear. I don't want to drink medicine now. I just want to rest. Su Xiaolan faltered slightly before she said with tears in her eyes, I've been brewing this medicine for an hour. You should at least drink some. It's a token of my sincerity. And Lin couldn't bear to see her like this, but he was also a little worried. There's nothing wrong with this medicine, right? Su Xiaolan's eyes reddened upon hearing this. What do you mean? Nothing. And Lin hurriedly accepted the medicine, only to find that his entire body was so feeble that he couldn't even hold a bowl properly. Come, let me feed you. Su Xiaolan took the bowl in a very considerate manner before picking up a spoon and feeding him mouthful by mouthful. And Lin, what was going on with this seemingly familiar scene? Let me tell you something first. I was severely wounded during my battle with the heavenly time god, and the great Empress of the Snow Maidens held me in her arms to help me recover. And Lin spoke with a serious expression. Su Xiaolan cocked her head to the side. Oh, I get it. Why are you telling me this? And Lin was relieved to see that Su Xiaolan's expression was completely normal, and he drank the spirit medicine in Su Xiaolan's hand one mouthful at a time. A warm and extremely comfortable feeling instantly spread through his entire body. You're the best, Xiaolan. And Lin lay on his bed with an elated expression. Of course I'm good to you. Su Xiaolan smiled. But unfortunately, you're not good to me. Everyone suddenly fell silent. A sense of foreboding welled up in Lin's heart. In the next instant, an excruciating pain shot through his entire body. First, there was an unbearable pain in his stomach, which then spread to every inch of his skin and even to his bones and consciousness. He felt as if the power of the medicine was going to tear his body apart. And Lin howled with pain. Why? Why are you doing this to me? He roared with rage and confusion. Su Xiaolan chuckled coldly. Do you really think I don't know that you kissed the 9-color divine vermilion bird? You actually got involved with a bird. And Lin. No, let me explain. This is all a misunderstanding. And Lin explained in a loud voice. I'm not listening. I'm not listening. I'm not listening. Su Xiaolan shook her head relentlessly. Then, a cruel smile appeared on her face. Fickle, heartless, and disloyal men like you deserve to be destroyed by the heavens. Die. Boom. The medicine erupted, and Lin frothed at the mouth amidst the excruciating pain, and his vision darkened as his legs gave way. Death, a vast expanse of darkness, and chaos ensued. A gentle voice sounded. And Lin was on the verge of tears upon hearing this voice. He had thought that he had arrived in heaven, but he had instead arrived in King hell. Even an idiot would know that things were not as simple as they seem now. It wasn't just that he had died and resurrected again and again. It was that everything he was experiencing now was extremely real and definitely not an illusion. He seemed to have fallen into a vicious cycle of reality. Once he died, he would resurrect on the bed, and Lin had already decided that he was going to sleep like this and not get up for now. Hurry up, and Lin, get up and take your medicine. Su Xiaolan's voice reverberated beside his ear. You're not getting up? No, I can't. The medicine has already been brewed, so I can't waste it. Su Xiaolan brought over a bowl of medicine and poured it into Lin's mouth, without even caring whether he had woken up or not. Chapter 1445. And Lin was dumbstruck by this scene. She was trying to murder her Dao partner while he was pretending to be asleep. And Lin's body was extremely feeble, so he was no match for Su Xiaolan's powerful attacks. He had no choice but to swallow a few more mouthfuls, and he almost lost his soul. He knew that he was going to die, and he opened his eyes with grief and indignation. And Lin, you're awake? Su Xiaolan smiled. And Lin was on the brink of a mental breakdown. Xiaolan, I really didn't do anything against my conscience. The Great Empress and the 9-color divine vermilion bird are all just misunderstandings. Su Xiaolan blinked with confusion. What are you talking about? Why are you suddenly bringing them into this? And Lin faltered slightly upon hearing this, before falling silent. Misunderstandings? No, things definitely weren't that simple. Moments later, a familiar burst of pain erupted from his abdomen before instantly spreading throughout his entire body. And Lin, all right, it was still the same old trick. A cruel smile appeared on Su Xiaolan's face. And Lin, are you all right? And Lin looked at Su Xiaolan expressionlessly. Tell me, who is it this time? Do you think I don't know what happened between you and Lan Xiaoni? Who would have thought that you wouldn't even spare a single fish? A fickle, heartless, and disloyal man like you deserves to be destroyed by heaven and earth. Die. Su Xiaolan yelled. And Lin dead. The world fell into darkness again. In his murky state of consciousness, a familiar voice sounded again. And Lin opened his eyes to look at the familiar woman before him. The candlelight flickered, illuminating the woman's elegant brows, her bright eyes, her delicate lips, and her face that was filled with concern. Xiaolan. And Lin sat up in shock. He hugged the woman in front of him tightly and said affectionately, I love you. Su Xiaolan was bewildered by the scene in front of her. After a while, she hugged Lin and said with a smile, I love you too. And Lin rejoiced in his heart. He had finally broken through this hurdle. This move of heaven and earth great shift was a roundabout way to save the country. Through the two of them expressing their intentions, it successfully diverted Su Xiaolan's attention. Wonderful. And Lin, you're badly injured. It's time for you to take your medicine. Su Xiaolan's smile remained unchanged. And Lin, Xiaolan, I really do love you. And Lin said solemnly. Su Xiaolan replied softly, Yes, so, and Lin, it's time for you to take your medicine. And Lin was about to have a mental breakdown. He had already expressed his feelings, so why did she still want to kill him? This didn't make sense. At this moment, Su Xiaolan had already handed over a bowl of spirit medicine with a dainty smile on her face. And Lin reached out to receive the spirit medicine, and he had only just received it when he casually tossed it onto the ground. Bam! The bowl shattered, and the medicine spilled all over the ground. An apologetic expression appeared on Lin's face. Oh no, my hand slipped. I'm sorry. Su Xiaolan faltered slightly, as if she hadn't expected something like this to happen. However, a smile soon appeared on her face again. I see. It's all right. I'll make you another bowl. No need, no need. I'll be fine after a nap, and Lin said anxiously. No need. Su Xiaolan paused momentarily before walking into the kitchen, and Lin panicked. I already said no need. I don't want to take medicine. You don't need to take medicine. Su Xiaolan's voice sounded from the kitchen. I'll make you something to nourish your body. And Lin finally heaved a sigh of relief upon hearing this. Immediately afterward, he saw Su Xiaolan walk out of the kitchen with a bright hatchet in her hand. The sharp blade was still reflecting an astonishing cold light. And Lin's eyes widened. This, Xiaolan, why did you bring a hatchet out? Su Xiaolan tilted her head. To cook. To cook? Why did you bring a hatchet out? And Lin was astonished. Oh, that. Because the dish I'm cooking is a famous dish from the Celestial Court, Su Xiaolan said with a dainty smile. And Lin gulped. What famous dish? Crispy and fragrant braised super pork trotters, Su Xiaolan said. So, go cook in the kitchen. Why are you waving a hatchet in front of me? And Lin's lips twitched. Su Xiaolan smiled. Men are all big pig trotters. I'm here to collect ingredients. And Lin, no. Why? I love you, Xiaolan. And Lin was in despair as he struggled with all his might. You still have the nerve to ask me why. Su Xiaolan gritted her teeth. You love me, but you love other people too. Why didn't you say that when you were being lovey-dovey with Xianyuan Cheng? You're really something. I never thought that I would be cuckolded by a man. Su Xiaolan was furious, and Lin was confused. Wait, did you say Big Brother Cheng? Fickle, heartless, and disloyal men like you deserve to be destroyed by the heavens. Die. Su Xiaolan roared as she swung her hatchet toward Lin. Wait, Su Xiaolan, you've gone too far. And Lin was also enraged. Anyone could be insulted, but he and Big Brother Cheng were not allowed to be insulted. Su Xiaolan didn't seem to hear him at all. She chuckled coldly as she swung the hatchet toward Lin. Splat! Blood splattered everywhere. The world was dyed red, and Lin was dead, amidst a sea of chaos and darkness. A gentle and familiar voice sounded once again. And Lin knew that this wasn't an illusion, nor was it a nightmare. This was an extremely realistic hell. The terrifying memory of having his body torn apart by the hatchet was deeply imprinted in his mind. The excruciating pain was still spreading throughout his entire body. It wanted the person you loved the most to kill you over and over again. You had to endure both physical and mental torture over and over again in an endless cycle. This was the most vicious torture. And Lin, you're awake. It's time to drink your medicine. Su Xiaolan's smile was still as gentle as ever. Xiaolan, I love you. And Lin said with a serious expression. I know. Here, drink your medicine, Su Xiaolan said with a smile. And Lin was in despair. Su Xiaolan wasn't even going to say, I love you too this time. Xiaolan, why don't you say you love me too? And Lin was unwilling to give up. Su Xiaolan's smile remained unchanged. I've said it before. If there are any changes in the future, I'll let you know. And Lin, how could there be such a simple answer? Xiaolan, I just want to say that I love you. Even if you give me poison, I'll drink it willingly. And Lin said with a serious expression. Su Xiaolan's hand trembled slightly, and the spirit medicine in the bowl rippled. And Lin looked at Su Xiaolan. Then I'll drink it. Su Xiaolan didn't say anything. Then I'll really drink it? And Lin asked again. Just drink it. What are you waiting for? Su Xiaolan placed the bowl next to Lin's mouth and gulped down the medicine. Gulp, gulp, and Lin was forced to drink all of the medicine in the bowl. Suddenly, he felt a sharp pain in his abdomen. Then, the pain spread throughout his entire body, as if his body was going to be torn apart. Su Xiaolan's face was covered in tears as she caressed Lin's face. Thank you for loving me so much. Even if it's poison, you're willing to drink it willingly. But I'm officially informing you that I don't love you anymore, and Lin, which eye of yours saw me willingly drink it? And Lin was indignant. Why? Su Xiaolan's expression suddenly crumbled. You sleep with Dubai every day. Don't think I don't know what you're up to? And Lin. This was too insulting. Dubai was a dog, and a male dog. Fickle, heartless, and abandoning men like you deserve to be destroyed by heaven and earth. Go to hell. Su Xiaolan roared as a slap landed on Lin's face. Slap! And Lin died, in a stretch of darkness. And Lin, a gentle female voice sounded in his ear. Don't sleep anymore. It's time to get up and drink your medicine. Just like that, and Lin fell into an inescapable cycle of reincarnation. In this world, he was being killed by the person he loved the most. Blow after blow, bone-deep pain after bone-piercing pain. There seemed to be no end to all of this. Chapter 1446. On the border of the opposite shore realm, a cruel smile appeared on the Snow Maiden's face, which was as translucent as golden jade. I'm so happy to see all of you in pain. It's so hilarious to see all of you wailing in agony and crying. The heavenly time god closed her eyes and murmured to herself, but she didn't bother to disguise the sinister smile on her face. No one was looking anyway, so it didn't matter how perverted her smile was. And Lin, the celestial arch, and the 100 million snow maidens she had subdued were all in agony after reincarnation, and she was finally able to rest easy. As she savored the taste, she opened her eyes that were as clear as gemstones. The heavenly time god turned toward the south with a smile on her face. The snow maidens have been destroyed, and the human race is my next target. The celestial arch has already been subdued by me, so who else can pose a threat to me? But even if it's just killing an ant, it takes time and strength. How troublesome, she murmured to herself as she slowly walked forward. Her body became more and more insubstantial, and she was about to undergo spatial travel. Slap! At this moment, a hand suddenly pressed down on her shoulder. The heavenly time god's body shuddered, and an extremely dangerous feeling surged through her entire body. Who are you? She didn't turn around in fear of provoking the being behind her. I'm a human ant that you're going to crush. The being behind her spoke in a cold and indifferent voice. The heavenly time god instantly became very nervous. Her instincts were right. The being behind her was indeed giving her a very dangerous feeling, just like in Lin, who had been sucked into the 1,000-year sword. No, he was even more dangerous than in Lin. In her nervousness, she became even more determined to destroy the entire human race. One human being after another who posed a threat to her did not deserve to exist in this world. It was even time for her to reconsider her proposal to completely wipe out the entire world. In the end, the heavenly time god still turned around to look at the human before her. This was a young cultivator in a coarse linen robe. His skin was fair, and his features were delicate and handsome. His eyes were especially bright and energetic, but his expression was a little colder as he looked at her. Who are you? The heavenly time god asked. Chun Chun. The young man smiled. The second heavenly disciple of the heaven-crushing sect, Chun Chun. The heavenly time god smiled. Heaven-crushing sect? What a stupid name. What an arrogant and ignorant gang. Whether it's broken or not, you'll find out in the future. Chun Chun wasn't angry. After a short while, he He shook his head and said with a hint of pity, "You could have died a little later. You made a mistake by putting someone in danger." He's the third heavenly disciple of our heaven-crushing sect. The heavenly time god wasn't interested in Chun Chen's bullish asterisk tea, but she couldn't help but ask, "Who is it?" "It's him." Chun Chen smiled as he extended a hand toward the heavenly time god. That hand clearly wasn't affecting anything between heaven and earth, but it was expanding infinitely in the heavenly time god's field of vision, obscuring the entire heavens. In the end, it was as if it were going to grasp the entire heaven and earth in its hand. The heavenly time god's expression shifted drastically, and she hurtled back in retreat. At the same time, a huge amount of golden light turned into a circle and enveloped his body. That was the power of time decay. Any energy that entered the range of her halo would be annihilated into nothingness by the power of time. I'm as insignificant as a speck of dust, so why should I fear the passage of time? Chun Chen spoke in an indifferent voice. As he spoke, his body had already charged into the halo of time decay and appeared right before the heavenly time god. The heavenly time god's pupils contracted. The power of time decay was completely ineffective against him. Heaven-crushing technique, palm heaven. Chun Chen's hand reached toward the heavenly time god's chest, and his 5 fingers were imbued with the power of 5 different elements, as well as the power of destruction and rebirth in his palm. The heavenly time god wanted to evade, but there was nowhere to evade. It was as if she couldn't evade Chun Chen's palm, no matter where she hid. Bam! Chun Chen's palm fell upon the heavenly time god's chest, and he seemed to have grabbed onto something before pulling it out. In the beginning, it was only an oval ball of light. Soon, countless balls of light began to appear, and they began to peel away at a faster and faster rate. In the end, a golden light engulfed the entire earth. Time flew by. One snow maiden after another appeared on the ground. They were either wailing with anguish or weeping with anguish. Mengji, Shangguan Yi, the snow maiden emperors, and the celestial arch also appeared one after another. On top of a building not far away, a tall and slender woman in a rainbow-colored imperial robe with peerlessly beautiful features and beautiful dragon horns hugged a white, furry ball in her arms as she looked in Chun Chen's direction with an envious expression. What a powerful technique. Is this the heaven-crushing technique that I'm supposed to learn? The white ball flapped its little wings with excitement on its face. A single heaven and earth reversal technique is able to play with heaven and earth in the palm of his hand. How majestic! This is what it means to be the most powerful being in the entire world. Is he the second heavenly disciple of the heaven-crushing sect? I'm already head over heels in love with him, and I wish I could die. All of a sudden, the white ball's expression froze, and its voice came to an abrupt halt, as if it had seen something extremely incredible. How could this be? My 1,000-year sword was broken by you? The heavenly time god stared at the man before her with incredulity on her face. Chun Chen's expression remained calm as a golden ball of light shattered in his palm. A person slowly revealed their true form and appeared in front of him. A rare hint of arrogance appeared in Chun Chen's voice. He is the third heavenly disciple of my heaven-crushing sect. I followed the aura of the finger of the heavenly Tao here to save him. The heavenly time god came to a sudden realization upon seeing the man. That's right, this man was indeed the most dazzling living being among the human race. It was understandable that Chun Chen had come to save him. That was because this man was none other than Enlin. Chun Chen didn't even get a chance to say anything before Enlin abruptly threw his arms around Chun Chen and howled with tears. Wah, I was wrong, Xiaolan. I'm a fickle, and unfaithful man. I should be destroyed by the heavens. Can you forgive me? Sop. Enlin wiped his tears and snot onto Chun Chen's linen clothes. The heavenly time god's mouth gaped open slightly as she stared at the scenes unfolding before her eyes. Chun Chen looked at Enlin expressionlessly, and he suddenly regretted his decision to save Enlin. He was saving the third heavenly disciple of the heaven-crushing sect, not this nut job. This was way too King humiliating. And Lin suddenly felt like something was wrong as he sobbed and sobbed. How could Xiaolan's clothes be so coarse? And her body wasn't that hard either. He raised his head to discover a man looking at him with a cold expression. Holy CK. Who the CK are you? And Lin was given a massive fright, and he immediately pushed Chun Chun away. He focused his gaze and was elated. It's you, Chun Chun? If I hadn't come, you would have continued to be a fickle, heartless, and disloyal man, Chun Chun said expressionlessly. An awkward expression appeared on Lin's face. He looked around at the vast environment around him, and he fell into a daze again at the sight of all types of intricately carved ice castles. It was as if a very long time had passed, as if a lifetime had passed. I'm back. I'm finally back. And Lin wept tears of joy. Chapter 1447. No one knew what Lin had experienced. He was the only one who knew how he had survived this period of time. He had reincarnated again and again, and he had been killed again and again. No matter how much he struggled, it was useless. And Lin swore that even if hell existed in the mortal world, it definitely wouldn't be this terrifying. If Chun Chun had arrived any later, perhaps Lin would have already gone insane by the time he had rescued him. At the top of the palace stood the great empress of the evil dragon tribe. The white ball of fur in her arms was no longer able to remain calm. Master? The white ball of fur spoke with incredulity. Never would it have thought that it would encounter its master under such circumstances. The ancient dragon empress, the new Tao integration stage, super mighty figure, and the fourth heavenly disciple of the heaven-crushing sect, was also staring blankly at the white-robed man in the distance. She knew that Chun Chun had come out of seclusion to rescue the legendary third heavenly disciple of the heaven-crushing sect. The heaven-crushing sect had invited him several times, but he had always refused. Even so, the heaven-crushing sect still reserved the position of third heavenly disciple for him. It was also because of that mysterious being that she had joined the heaven-crushing sect that she had to settle for a mysterious being who had never joined the heaven-crushing sect before. The ancient dragon empress often wondered just what kind of supremely talented prodigy could be so highly regarded by the supreme mighty figures of the heaven-crushing sect. She was very much looking forward to meeting the legendary third heavenly disciple. Who would have thought that she would actually meet the third heavenly disciple today? Not only that, but it was also someone she had seen before. So, it's you, the turtle cultivator. The ancient dragon empress almost threw up a mouthful of blood. Wasn't this the cultivator who had been hiding in his turtle shell during their battle in the ancient Tai Chu dragon realm? My God, he's the third heavenly disciple. The ancient dragon empress was struck by the absurdity of this world. To think that she had looked up to him in the past. Wasn't this a little too much of contrast? However, the ancient dragon empress wasn't a shallow person, and she wouldn't look down on Lin just because of this. Lin definitely had some outstanding qualities to be able to catch the attention of the two heavenly disciples. The ancient dragon empress was still looking on intently. She was then greeted by the sight of Lin wailing with Chun Chun in his arms, wiping away his tears and snot. The scene was so beautiful that the ancient dragon empress couldn't bear to look at it. All of the snow maidens who had been trapped by the 1,000-year sword returned to their temporary abode. They had also gradually regained their senses, and they were struck by the sight of the man who had suddenly appeared before the heavenly time god. Did he save us? He's also a human. All of the snow maidens wore complex expressions as they looked at the youth in linen garments. Senior Chun Chun, thank you for saving me. And Lin said gratefully, You're welcome. Resisting the representatives of the heavenly Tao has always been our responsibility, Chun Chun said with a smile. And Lin faltered upon hearing this. Isn't it your responsibility to crush the heavens? The representatives of the heavenly Tao are also a part of the heavens, Chun Chun patiently explained. And Lin was enlightened. Not far away, the celestial arch looked at Chun Chun cautiously. The heaven-crushing sect and the heaven-mending sect were two opposing sects to begin with. Now that the second heavenly disciple of the heaven-crushing sect had appeared here, he couldn't help but be on his guard. A friendly smile appeared on Chun Chen's face upon seeing the celestial arch. Now, do you know how useless you are? The celestial arch, our heaven-crushing sect, is the true professional when it comes to fighting the heavens. Chun Chen didn't look at the celestial thearch's expression. Instead, he turned to Lin and spoke in a gentle voice. The finger of the heavenly Tao shouldn't be used like that. If you unleash it without restraint, your body will easily collapse. Then how should I use it? And Lin asked. In all honesty, the finger of the heavenly Tao was extremely powerful. However, there was one thing that gave him the biggest headache, and that was the after effects of using it. A warm smile appeared on Chun Chen's face. Do you want to learn? Join the heaven-crushing sect, and I'll teach you. And Lin. No, Chun Chen wasn't angered by this. All right, then I'll still teach you. I just so happen to have some material here. He turned toward the golden snow maidens as he spoke. The heavenly time god immediately turned around and transformed into a streak of light in an attempt to escape. Let me teach you how to fight the heavens first. Chun Chen spoke with a smile as his body abruptly disappeared on the spot. In the next instant, he had already appeared directly above the streak of light. He put his hands together, and a black vortex appeared behind him, as if it could suck in all things. If you want to escape as a streak of light, then I'll give you a black hole that can suck in even light. Heaven-crushing technique, Dark Tao, child. The black vortex suddenly exploded. Heaven and earth abruptly dimmed. Everything in this world was reduced to nothingness. In that instant, Lin felt as if even his consciousness was about to be sucked away. The heavenly time god scream erupted from Chun Chen's direction. The streak of golden light was like a shirt that was relentlessly torn apart by the darkness. Soon, the golden light revealed her true form, which was the heavenly time god in the form of a golden snow maiden. Chun Chen appeared before the heavenly time god, and his fist was enshrouded in golden light as it expanded in her field of vision. Heaven-crushing technique, Fist of the Heavenly Tao. Bam! An earth-shattering explosion erupted. The heavenly time god was punched into the ground, and the earth tremored violently. Chun Chen turned to Lin. When using heaven-crushing techniques, you have to know how to control and unleash them at will. You have to suppress the power of the technique and strike with the most precision. If you unleash all of your power in one go, not only will it be detrimental to your own body, but it'll also be difficult for you to continue to inflict damage on your enemy. The heavenly time god lay in a massive crater, and another crack sounded as another crack appeared on her divine halo. She was about to go insane. My Xiao Wan Wan. The 3 cracks on her divine halo became 4. Chun Chen's brows furrowed. Xiao Wan Wan? What kind of disgusting name is that? He stepped forward and flashed toward the heavenly time god again. Heaven-crushing technique, Kick of the Heavenly Tao. Chun Chen's foot seemed to have transcended space and time, and it instantly reached the heavenly time god's lower abdomen, upon which her petite body was kicked into the shape of a bow. Bam! Another earth-shattering explosion erupted. The heavenly time god was kicked back tens of thousands of meters, and a 5th crack appeared on her divine halo. Chun Chen continued to press his advantage. Die! A ferocious expression appeared on the heavenly time god's face, and the light from her divine halo suddenly became as dazzling as the sun as she unleashed a palm toward Chun Chen. The power of time that had been tempered by countless years swept toward Chun Chen like a tsunami. Everything in the wake of the palm was reduced to extremely minuscule specks of dust. Time dust. Chun Chen could sense an extremely dense power of time within this attack. Anyone who fell into the heavenly time god's power would be subjected to the power of time. He didn't dare to underestimate his opponent, and he unleashed his fist of the heavenly Tao to clash with the heavenly time god's palm. Boom! The 2 attacks collided at the same time, and heaven and earth exploded. At the center of the collision, space twisted and shattered. Time fell into chaos, and all things were destroyed, as if heaven and earth were returning to primal chaos. Even the earth was cracked open for several hundred kilometers by the shock waves. Unlin's heart was pounding with fear. Was this what Chun Chun meant by using a heaven-crushing technique to suppress his own power? This world was about to be destroyed by him. Just as he was feeling astonished, the system in his mind suddenly began to flash violently. Chapter 1448. The system, which had been idle all this time, actually lit up at this moment. Unlin's heart jolted with shock, and he immediately injected his consciousness into his system. All of a sudden, an extremely dazzling light almost blinded him. A string of information flowed into his mind in a frenzy, threatening to make his head explode. Ah! Unlin let loose an anguished wail as he clutched his head in agony. The Celestial Arch, the Great Empress, Shangguan Yi, and the others instantly arrived beside Enlin. "Mr. Enlin, are you all right? What's wrong?" Everyone stared at Enlin with confusion and concern on their faces. They had injected their power into Enlin's body, but aside from the fact that his body was extremely feeble, they didn't discover any other abnormalities. Only Enlin knew that he was having such a headache because the spell techniques and true intent that the system had absorbed were far too powerful for him to handle. Heaven-crushing technique 2, Foot of the Heavenly Tao. A kick imbued with the essential great Tao of heaven and earth. Initial mastery allows one to shatter space. Phenomenal mastery allows one to sink entire continents and send anything flying. Heaven-crushing technique 3, Fist of the Heavenly Tao. A punch imbued with the essential great Tao of heaven and earth. Initial mastery allows one to shatter space and destroy all things. Heaven-crushing technique 8, Tao of darkness. A punch imbued with the essential power of darkness. Initial mastery allows one to shatter space and destroy all things. Under normal circumstances, the system would only awaken one cultivation method at a time. However, it was as if he had opened a series of treasure chests. The system had instantly imparted many spell techniques to him, all of which were extremely powerful. How can Lin accept this? Every time Chun Chun used a new heaven-crushing technique, it would be recorded and analyzed by the system before being imparted to Enlin. Chun Chun was most likely aware of this, as he had witnessed the entire process of Enlin secretly learning from Enlin during the free-for-all battle, and he knew that Enlin had the ability to instantly master a technique. This meant that Chun Chun was doing this on purpose. During this battle against the Heavenly Time God, he was truly trying to teach Enlin how to battle the heavens. Furthermore, he was teaching him step by step without any reservations. That's right. This was the Heaven-Crushing Sect's generous gift pack for heaven-crushing techniques. Enlin was on the verge of breaking down. He had no choice but to accept such a huge gift. But to be honest, he actually didn't want to accept these spells. After all, the greater the power, the greater the responsibility. If others were to give you all kinds of heaven-defying moves, shouldn't you do something? Enlin just wanted to be a salted fish. Right at this moment, Chun Chun and the Heavenly Time God had already separated. The clash between the two seemed to have ended in a draw. Chun Chun's right hand was a little shriveled and aged. As for the Heavenly Time God, her palm had already been shattered into specks of light. The Heavenly Time God chuckled coldly. Time reversal. The specks of light converged, forming a complete palm once again. She was slender and extremely agile. She looked at Chun Chun with a smug expression, as if to say, "I have unlimited regenerative abilities. How are you going to fight me?" Gotcha! A crisp crack suddenly erupted. The Heavenly Time God's expression gradually congealed, and she rolled her eyes as if she wanted to see her divine halo. A sixth crack began to appear on her divine halo. The divine halo, which had originally appeared to be extremely intricate and holy, was now riddled with cracks, as if it were a piece of jade that was about to shatter. My. The Heavenly Time God seemed to have been severely traumatized, and she couldn't even speak properly. At this moment, Chun Chun had already appeared before the Heavenly Time God again. In the sky above, dark clouds suddenly surged, and a golden light broke through the very center of the vortex. There seemed to be a boundless sea of light within the golden light. However, this was actually the light of a divine weapon. The divine weapon fell from the sky and landed in Chun Chen's hand. This was a sword that was as dazzling as gold and as smooth as a mirror, reflecting heaven and earth. 9 mysterious ancient spell formations formed a series of halos of light that revolved around the blade of the sword. Each of the halos was imbued with earth-shattering might, and the 9 halos combined to create a peerless divine might. This is the final attack. Heaven-crushing technique, sort of the heavenly Tao. Chun Chun wielded his devastating longsword, and the heavenly time god's body began to crack open like a spiderweb as her sword intent swept forth. He, I won't be able to block this sword strike. A cruel smile appeared on the heavenly time god's face. But I don't need to. She took off the divine halo from her head and swallowed it. Chun Chun was suddenly struck by a sense of foreboding, and he immediately slashed his sword toward the heavenly time god. Let's die together. Let's fall into the endless cycle of time and die billions of times. The heavenly time god let loose a final roar like a wild beast, and her entire body self-detonated before Chun Chen's sword of the heavenly Tao had even landed. Boom! All of a sudden, heaven and earth tremored violently. A massive amount of light soared into the sky. It was imbued with unfathomable power of time, and it flowed into the heavens like a stream of water. Senior student Chun Chun and Lin let loose a panicked yell at the sight of the pillar of light that had instantly engulfed Chun Chun. However, he was only worried about Chun Chun for a short while before he began to worry about himself. This was because he discovered that the pillar of light was expanding outward. Run! And Lin yelled. The celestial arch reacted the quickest, and he sprinted for 50 kilometers with Lin in his arms. The great empress, Meng Ji, and Shangwani followed closely behind him. However, the pillar of light was expanding far faster than they had imagined, and it caught up to them in the blink of an eye before engulfing them. Chun Chun, Master, on a crystal palace. The ancient dragon empress and Shui Zhantian yelled at the same time. The snow maidens in the distance also yelled the great empress and Shangwan Yi's names. After the pillar of light expanded to its limit, it began to slowly shrink until it became a speck of light that disappeared between heaven and earth. Meanwhile, an indistinct burst of power returned to heaven and earth. The sky was still the same sky, but it was a little different. Everyone turned their attention back to where they had been. Chun Chun and Lin, the celestial arch, and even the great empress, Shangwan Yi and Meng Ji were nowhere to be seen. It was as if they had never existed in the first place. Master, Shui Zhantian stared blankly at the empty battlefield, and tears finally began to flow from his eyes as he recalled the heavenly time god's threat to perish together with Lin. Wah! Master, how could you die like this? You died at such a young age. Wah! The ancient dragon empress was also in a daze. The second heavenly disciple of the heaven-crushing sect had died, just like that. He had been fighting with ease during the battle. So how could he have died? Chapter 1449. The battle finally drew to a conclusion. The death timer in the minds of all the snow maidens disappeared. It had disappeared along with the heavenly time, God's death. However, the snow maidens couldn't bring themselves to rejoice. And Lin had died, their great empress had died, and their beloved high priestess, Meng Ji and Shangwan Yi had died. Oh, the celestial arch had also died. The heavenly time god had taken all the important people with her when she perished. All of the snow maidens fell into an irrepressible silence and grief. Yin Hua stood on the shattered ground and raised her head. Tears welled up in her eyes as she looked up at the empty space in front of her. And Lin, come back. You still have the inheritance of the snow maidens. Her voice reverberated through the air, but no one responded. Tears streamed down her face. If you don't come back, I'm going to break my promise. However, the only response she received was a frosty gust of wind. All of the snow maidens looked up at the holy palace leader with grief on their faces. By the way, why did palace leader Yin Hua call for Lin instead of our great empress? One of the snow maidens suddenly asked. All of the snow maidens, an older snow maiden, stepped forward. That's because Enlin isn't a member of our snow maiden tribe, but he still stood up and sacrificed his life to save us. He is the hero of our tribe, and we should always respect him and remember him. All of the snow maidens were instantly filled with deep veneration upon hearing this. The snow maiden who had questioned Yanhua was also extremely ashamed, and tears welled up in her eyes. I was wrong. I shouldn't have misunderstood Palace Leader Yanhua. Sect Leader Enlin, I'm so sorry. At this moment, Rogu, Su Jingxiang, and the other palace leaders also made their way over to Yanhua to console her. Yanhua was usually very stubborn, but she was now sobbing her heart out. They'll definitely come back, right? Just like how they were sucked into the 1,000-year sword. Someone will be able to break through it and save them, right? That's right, Sister Hua. Don't be sad. Su Jingxiang spoke with a sympathetic expression. They all knew that the 1,000-year sword was only a technique, and it was not something that the heavenly time god's self-detonation could compare with. Right now, Enlin and the others might be trapped somewhere else, but they might have already been blown to smithereens. However, whether he was dead or alive, he wanted to see his corpse. Perhaps, Yanhua's speculation could also become the hope of the crowd. The impact of the incident was still fermenting. Within the imperial palace of the Celestial Court, the jade tablet of the Celestial Sovereign suddenly cracked, and the 4 sovereigns were shocked. For 9 immortal sect. Little Tion, you're finally back. And Lin said he was going to look for you. Didn't he come back with you? Su Xiaolan smiled brightly when she saw the snowball in front of her in the flame pavilion. Wah, Su Xiaolan. Master is dead. Shui Zhantian sobbed into Su Xiaolan's arms. Su Xiaolan faltered slightly before stroking Shui Zhantian's soft, white fur with a smile. Don't joke around. Enlin is the most prodigious man in this world. Even the heavens couldn't do anything to him during that battle with the heavenly wind god. So how could he have died? This is absolutely true. I saw it with my own eyes. His opponent was a heavenly time god, and it self-detonated in the end. Not only Master, but even the Celestial Arch and the Great Empress. Shui Zhantian didn't even get a chance to finish his sentence before his body was blasted through the roof of the flame pavilion like a cannonball. Only Su Xiaolan's enraged roar reverberated throughout heaven and earth. I'm not listening. F*CK off. News of the Celestial Thearcha's death and Enlin's death couldn't be kept a secret. They had to hold funerals for the Great Empress, Mengji, and Shangwanyi. The Snow Maidens held lavish funerals for the Great Empress, Mengji, and Shangwanyi. At the same time, they also held lavish funerals for the Celestial Arch, Enlin, and Chen Shun. The news of the funerals created a massive stir across the entire Tai Chu continent. This was a monumental event that only happened once in 10,000 years, and the repercussions it brought were even more earth-shattering. Some people didn't believe it, some people wept tears of anguish, and some people lived in fear. It was quite clear that if this was true, then it would be an extremely heavy blow to the human race and the Snow Maidens. The Heavenly Court and the 4-9 Immortal Sect had both chosen to remain silent. Thus, many living beings were still in disbelief that the supremely talented prodigy, who had risen to prominence in just a few short years and was renowned across the entire continent, as well as the monarch who had ruled over the kingdom of the 9 states for countless years, would fall just like that. However, all of this was confirmed a month later. A month later, the Celestial Court announced that they would hold a funeral for the Celestial Arch and the Celestial Court War, God and Lin. The entire world was shaken by this announcement. The Celestial Court officially confirmed the deaths of the Celestial Arch and Enlin, and this news created a massive stir across the entire Tai Chu continent. Countless mighty figures came from all over the continent to offer their condolences. There were representatives from the Hall of Creation, the Western Paradise, the Holy Paradise, the Dragon Court, the Opposite Shore Realm, the Spirit Lake Realm, the Southern Heavenly Wing Nation, and other powers. However, the West Sea Alliance and the 4-9 Immortal Sect didn't send a single representative. The 4-9 Immortal Sect refused to admit that their sect leader had perished. The world merely thought that they couldn't accept the fact that their sect leader had perished, so they didn't really care. Not long after that, all of the higher-ups of the Snow Maiden race announced that the entire Snow Maiden race would submit to the 4-9 Immortal sect and would listen to their commands. This announcement created another massive stir across the entire continent. The repercussions of this event were still brewing, and it would most likely be difficult to quell in a short time. Many living beings were merely astonished by the deaths of a few mighty figures. However, the super mighty figures who truly stood at the pinnacle of the continent had already sensed lethal danger from this event. Within a vast expanse of darkness, after what seemed like an eternity, all of a sudden, a gentle voice sounded. Unlin, his consciousness slowly returned. He felt as if he had been struck by lightning upon hearing this familiar voice, and he immediately sprang up. I don't want to drink the medicine. I don't want to drink the medicine. Bam! Ow! And Lin felt as if he had bumped his head into something, and it hurt a little. He immediately opened his eyes, and his vision gradually cleared, only to discover that Shangguan was holding her intricate nose with her hand as she looked at him with an aggrieved expression. I'm sorry. And Lin only now realized that he had sprang up too suddenly, and he had bumped Shangguan Yi's nose. It's all right. Shangguan Yi rubbed her nose as she turned toward Lin. Why did you yell at me that I don't want to drink the medicine? An awkward smile appeared on Lin's face upon hearing this. It's nothing. I just had a nightmare. He looked at Shangguan Yi's extremely beautiful features, and memories flooded back to him like a tidal wave. He recalled the perilous battle that the Heavenly Time God had endured, as well as how she had been forced to self-detonate in the end. He was a little elated. Who would have thought that we would still be alive? Actually, we're not much better off than dead. Look around, Shangguan Yi said. And Lin looked around, and his pupils contracted as an expression of shock appeared on his face. Holy F***CK. What is this place? Chapter 1450. And Lin discovered that he was situated in an extremely peculiar space. This space was a vast expanse of pure golden color, and it appeared to be boundless. The ground was also golden in color, but he didn't know what material it was made of, but it was very soft and warm. A golden river surged in front of them, and they didn't know where it ended. Just looking at these images was actually quite a good idea. However, that river struck fear into Lin's heart. What was reflected in the river was not his face, but countless images. Those images were extremely terrifying, and they were tortures that the world did not dare to imagine. For example, insect eggs were implanted into one's body, which would constantly absorb nutrients from the host. The host's body would decay day by day, and their flesh would be devoured by the insects that hatched from the eggs. In the end, not even the bones would be left, and all of the living beings in the images would wail in anguish and despair. Above the river, there were many similar tortures, and even more terrifying tortures were innumerable. One after another, different kinds of torture scenes flowed forward like an endless river. Shangguan Yi made her way over to Lin. If it weren't for the fact that Shun used a spell technique to teleport us to the shore before we fell into the river, perhaps we would have had to experience all of the tortures on the river. And Lin's flesh crawled upon hearing this. Any one of the tortures on the river would be a fate worse than death, but he had almost had to experience all of them. He looked at the surging river with a dark expression. There's no F***king into this. Endless torture, it's simply the most terrifying hell in the world. Perhaps the Heavenly Time God placed all of the cruel tortures she had seen on this river. Shangguan Yi was also feeling a little fearful after witnessing this scene. So cruel. She said before she died that she was going to make us fall into an endless cycle of time and die billions of times. Who would have thought that we would die like this? And Lin sighed with emotion. He suddenly felt like Su Xiaolan's punishment of feeding him poison was like a dream come true. It had to be said that the Heavenly Time God's self-detonation was nowhere near as powerful as the 1,000-year sword. And Lin suddenly recalled that Chun was able to defend against the Heavenly Time God's self-detonation and save them in the process. Wasn't that even more bad *SS? By the way, where is Chun Chun? And Lin asked. Shangwan, he pointed a finger toward the river. He's in the river. And Lin was shocked. Then, his eyes reddened and he almost burst into tears. He sobbed, "Who would have thought that Senior Chun Chun would sacrifice himself in order to save us? He even had to endure such terrifying pain. What are you thinking about?" Shangwan, he rolled her eyes at Lin. Chun Chun must have gone into the river to find his way back. Perhaps he can find a way back in the river of time. He'll be fine, right? Does it hurt? And Lin asked worriedly. A smile appeared on Shangwan Yi's face. Your senior, Chun Chun, is very powerful. He has a special way to keep the river of time at bay. He had already taught the method to the great empress, Meng Ji, and the celestial arch, and all four of them were currently searching the river of time for a way back. I'll stay here to look after you. Everyone's risking their lives to get out of here. And Lin looked around at the vast expanse of golden light around him and realized that he had been trapped in this strange space. He couldn't use his spatial powers here, so he had no sense of direction. The only clue he had was the surging river before him, which was a river that recorded the cruelest torture in this world. Looking at this river for too long would make one dizzy and nauseated, and Lin couldn't take it anymore after looking at it for a while. This was much more thrilling than watching any horror movie. Any one of these scenes could make a normal person lose their soul or make them feel nauseated to the point where they wouldn't be able to eat for days. And Lin found a place to sit down before pulling out a spirit fruit and munching on it. Shangwan also made her way over and sat down beside Lin with a smile on her flawless features. It's very uncomfortable, isn't it? I felt even worse than you when I saw this river before, so I threw up right away. And Lin turned to Shangwan with a hint of surprise on his face, as if he didn't think that the legendary reincarnation of the Ice Matriarch would have such weak resistance. Shangwan Yi's legs were bent over, and her chin was resting on her knees. Her golden eyes, which were filled with a sense of majesty, gradually disappeared, and a hint of vulnerability and melancholy appeared on her face. She spoke in a soft voice. Look at those tortures. Even if I were to exhaust my imagination, I wouldn't be able to come up with anything like that, let alone the living beings that are being tortured. But in the river of time, there are almost no end to these types of tortures. Tell me, why are there so many living beings that are so depraved? And Lin couldn't help but smile upon hearing Shangwan Yi's words. There are all kinds of birds in a big forest. Can we think of a way to kill all of the bad birds in this forest? Or make sure that the bad birds don't even get a chance to be born? Shangwan Yi continued. Air. And Lin faltered slightly upon hearing this. Why did this sound like the ramblings of a little girl? It was as if she were roaring, all the bad people in this world should die. In this world, where there is good, there is also evil. And Lin thought to himself for a moment before replying, perhaps the reason why bad people exist is to accentuate the greatness of the good. Shangwan was quite amused by Lin's choice of words. Now that she thought about it, it did make sense. If there was black, there would be white. Only when there were dirty things would they accentuate the greatness of the good. There weren't many demonic sects to accentuate the righteous sects. So who would they accentuate the greatness of the righteous sects? However, people didn't like things that were black. Just like how everyone liked cleanliness, no one liked something that was filthy. Actually, I've always wanted to make the snow maidens into living beings that everyone loves. Shangwan looked at Lin and said, it's a pity that even though they're quite beautiful, they're all quite cold and aloof, just like the aloof goddesses you guys talk about. They're very cold and aloof, and they're very unapproachable to outsiders. As time passed, no other living beings were willing to interact with us. A smile appeared on Lin's face. So it was very rare for me to receive such warm hospitality from all of you. Not just rare, even the great empress hasn't received such warm hospitality from them. A vibrant smile appeared on Shangwan Yi's face, and Lin couldn't help but reminisce about the warm hospitality he had received from the Snow Maidens. And Lin, a gentle voice sounded beside his ear, and Lin turned around to discover that Shangwan Yi was looking at him with a gentle expression on her face. Her pink lips trembled slightly, as if she wanted to say something. And Lin's heart jolted, and his first reaction was, "No, Shangwan-yi, there's no way we could be together. Xiaolan will force me to drink medicine." And Lin, "I'm sorry. I'm really sorry." A guilty expression appeared on Shangwan-yi's face, and she lowered her head. And Lin faltered slightly upon hearing this. Things seemed to be developing in a different direction than he had imagined. "I'm the one who dragged you down with me. If it weren't for my request, you wouldn't have encountered so many life-threatening situations. I'm a jinx. It's all my fault." She hugged her bent legs with her arms and buried her head in her arms. She curled her body into a ball and sobbed in a low voice. "Whoever meets me will be unlucky. I've tried my best, but whoever meets me will be unlucky. Should I not get close to anyone? Or should I not even exist in this world?" And Lin was still in a daze. He looked at the woman who had suddenly burst into tears, and he was at a complete loss for what to do. Chapter 1451. Shangwan-yi's halo of bad luck was not to be trifled with. At the very least, no one in the Vermilion Bird sect dared to deny her halo of bad luck. She was like a bug in the system. Wherever she went, she would be wherever she went. Also, why she was so unlucky was a mystery. And Lin finally came to a realization. He had always been invincible, so why was he suddenly defeated by a heavenly god countless times? Could it be that it had something to do with Sister Shangwan-yi? He looked at Shangwan-yi, who was sobbing uncontrollably like a helpless little girl, and he tossed these speculations to the back of his mind. This was most likely just a coincidence. At the very least, he shouldn't blame Sister Shangwan-yi for this. He should be blaming himself for being too weak. And Lin patted Shangwan-yi's shoulder with a smile. "You can actually bring more than just bad luck to others. Good luck and misfortune are intertwined." Shangwan-yi's body shuddered slightly, and she looked up at Lin with a blank expression on her face. "Good luck and misfortune are intertwined? Well, have I ever brought good luck to others?" And Lin spoke with a serious expression. "Think about it. I encountered bad luck when I entered the Vermilion Bird Trial Grounds with you. I encountered a black phoenix at the Return to Void Pinnacle stage, but I fought to the death and obtained the Vermilion Bird Essence blood after killing him. That blood was a priceless treasure that indirectly saved Xiaolan and gave her a new lease on life. Do you think your misfortune is intertwined with good luck? If it weren't for the fact that you summoned the black phoenix, I wouldn't have been able to obtain the Vermilion Bird Essence blood." Shangwan, he was a little taken aback upon hearing this. "So, I'm the one who summoned the black phoenix?" And Lin's expression became even more serious. "When I'm with you, all of the bad luck I encounter will be on you." Shangwan, and Lin continued at the sight of her aggrieved expression. "Of course, all of the good luck I encounter will also be on you. Good luck and misfortune are intertwined after all." Shangwan blinked back the tears in her eyes, and a smile appeared on her face. "What a smooth talker. I'm arguing with reason." And Lin continued. "As for the Snow Maidens, the Heavenly Time God wanted to destroy your entire tribe, but I only went to save the Snow Maidens because of you. Didn't the entire Snow Maiden race escape from extinction because of you?" Shangwan looked at Lin with a mixture of shame and gratitude. "That's because you're a good person." And Lin was caught off guard, but he wasn't surprised by this. After all, he was a very good person to begin with. "It's just that I'm a little confused. Normally, the representatives of the Heavenly Tao are thinking about destroying the human race. So why did they start with the Snow Maidens this time?" "That's because the Snow Maidens are also humans." Shangwan looked up at Lin with her bright, black eyes. "The Snow Maidens are humans?" And Lin's eyes widened in shock. "Why are you so shocked? How are the Snow Maidens inhuman?" Shangwan pouted with displeasure. "They don't have a single man, but they can reproduce normally? You're telling me they're humans?" And Lin was incredulous. Shangwan blushed slightly. "I was a human in my past life, and I felt like men were disgusting, so I hid in the snow mountains to cultivate. In the end, I attained enlightenment, and not only did I change the essence of life, I also invented a method to reproduce asexually. That's how the Snow Maidens came to be." And Lin's mouth gaped open. He was even more astonished to hear this than when he heard the Snow Maidens were humans. He knew that Shangwan was the ice matriarch in her past life, which meant that not only was she the patriarch of an entire tribe, she had also created an entire tribe. A single person was able to create an entire tribe, and it was a very renowned and powerful tribe on the Tai Chu continent at that. How terrifying was that? By the way, you said you felt like men were disgusting in your past life, so now. And Lin turned to Shangwan Yi with a curious expression. Of course not now. Shangwan Yi was very nervous in case Lin misunderstood something. So she added, the ice matriarch is the ice matriarch, and I am me. I'm different in this life. And Lin nodded. Shangwan Yi was indeed different in this life. In fact, she was much more pitiful than she was in her past life. A thought suddenly occurred to him. By the way, we're in such dire straits now. Could there be some unexpected rewards here? Shangwan Yi looked around to find nothing but a vast expanse of golden light. It could be said that aside from the terrifying river, there was nothing else to be found. I don't think so. It's so empty here. What could we possibly find here? And Lin stood up and began to search around. He unleashed his divine sense to find that this space was boundless. He drew his evil-slaying sword and slashed it toward the soft ground, only to find that the evil-slaying sword, which was a divine tool, was unable to leave even the slightest mark on the ground. Wait, this doesn't seem to be material. And Lin slashed the ground with his sword. Even though his sword was obstructed, it didn't feel like he had struck any material object. Shangwan Yi stood up. Chen Shan said that this is a peculiar world constructed from the residual power of the heavenly time god. Due to the heavenly time god's death, this place has become an unconscious space. Due to the nature of the heavenly time god, this place is immortal. And Lin's head throbbed upon hearing this. For normal spell techniques, they would disappear on their own after a certain amount of time had passed. However, this spell technique was being unleashed by a freak. It was already dead, but the spell technique was still immortal. This meant that if Chun Shun and the others couldn't find a way to break out of this peculiar space, they would be trapped here forever. No wonder Shangwan Yi said that they were no different from being dead. After all, there was a very high chance that they were going to suffocate to death here. When Chun Shun and the others come back, I'm going to ask him to teach me how to isolate this river of time. I'm going to search for clues in the river as well. And Lin said with a determined expression, Me too. There's strength in numbers. Shangwan Yi nodded. The two of them looked on from the shore. Soon, ripples began to appear in the river downstream. Chun Chin's body gradually rose to the surface with an extremely exhausted expression. A smile appeared on his face at the sight of Lin's awakening. Lin, you're awake. How are your injuries? Lin smiled. It's all thanks to the great Empress Immortal Pill, as well as the time I've spent recuperating, that I've mostly recovered from my injuries. What's the situation now? Chun Shin made his way over to Lin with a disconsolate expression. It's not looking very good. This river is imbued with the worst evil in this world, and the images that appear in the water can be used to descend into the world within the images and be tortured. Seeing as it can lead to a specific world or space, then there should be a clue leading to the Tai Chu continent within the images, but I haven't been able to find it. Give me the method to enter the river. I'll look for it as well, and Lin said. Chun Chin nodded, and a white light erupted from his fingertip as he pressed a finger onto Lin's forehead. Don't refuse. I'll inject the void body mantra into your body. A short while later, when Lin opened his eyes again, his body had already become a little illusory and indistinct. So that's how it is. I can use this method to eliminate my presence to the greatest extent, thereby making the power of time ignore my existence. And Lin's eyes lit up, and he made his way over to the river and looked at the hellish scene before him before carefully stepping into the river. Chapter 1452. A burst of suction force suddenly erupted from the image on the river of time as it sensed Lin's approach. Lin's heart jolted with shock, but before he had a chance to do anything, the suction force seemed to have lost its target after making contact with his illusionary body. Impressive. He couldn't help but praise. Chun Shin's power could only be described as unfathomably powerful. He could even use a spell technique that could isolate the heavenly time god's power. Not only that, but he could also mass-produce this spell technique and teach it to others. He had just said that only those with exceptional aptitudes and cultivation bases at the return to void stage or above could learn this spell technique, which was quite a high requirement. However, this was definitely an extremely important step for the human race in the fight against the representatives of the heavenly gods. The heaven-crushing sect really did live up to its reputation. Just as Enlin was sighing with emotion, a ding-dong suddenly sounded from his system. His heart jolted upon hearing this. The system had been quite active recently. Was it really not going to issue some kind of scam mission at a time like this? He had already been trapped here for so long. If he continued to torture people, he would really die. Enlin was a little uneasy as he opened the system and looked up. A line of text appeared on his system. Detected that host has come into contact with the essential power of time, now assigning the following special mission. Enter a certain image on the river of time and experience the power of evil and die once. Mission success. Receive stage 2 of the Een God cultivation method. Mission failure. Become a celestial maiden in Lin forever. Unlin F *CKU system. Motherf *Ker. Did you hear that? Chen Shen discovered Enlin's strange expression, and he asked in a concerned voice, Enlin, why are you crying? That's right. 2 streams of tears had already flowed down Enlin's face. Life was so difficult, but the system still had to be the straw that broke the camel's back. He slowly withdrew his foot, and his lips trembled as he spoke in a choked voice. If you were given 2 choices, the first would be to enter the image on the river of time and die once. The second would be to become a celestial maiden forever. Which would you choose? Chun Chen's expression shifted drastically. What nonsense are you spouting? Shang Guan, he immediately replied. Of course I choose to become a celestial maiden. Enlin's face darkened. You're a woman, don't talk. Shang Guan reluctantly shut her mouth as she turned to look at Enlin with curiosity in her large, bright eyes. Do you have to choose one? Enlin wiped the tears off his face and nodded. Yes. Shang Guan, Chun Chen's expression changed slightly. He looked at Enlin and asked hesitantly, Fellow Taoist Enlin, why are you acting so strange? Have you been cursed? Enlin immediately nodded. Yes, I've been cursed. It's a curse called Shitong. Shitong's curse. Chun Chen stroked his chin with a blank expression. But I don't see any traces of a curse on you. And Lin raised his head with a gloomy expression as he looked up at the boundless golden space. Perhaps it's because this curse is too powerful? There should be a way to dispel it or transfer it, but I'm not powerful enough to do that at my current level, and I don't know how long I'm going to be tortured by it. Chen Shen didn't dwell on this topic after seeing that Enlin was in a good state. I feel like gender is just a worldly thing. Compared to going through a terrifying ordeal and coming back from the dead, I don't think becoming a celestial maiden is too much of an issue. He continued to look at Enlin with a cold expression. If you feel like you're not used to becoming a celestial maiden, you can use an immortal spell to transform yourself into a man after you become a celestial maiden. Enlin instantly flared up upon hearing this, and he grabbed onto Chun Chen's collar with an agitated expression. Are you kidding me? My life essence is completely different now. If I become a celestial maiden and then transform into a man, I'll just be lying to myself. Chun Chen's expression remained nonchalant. In my eyes, the only difference between a man and a woman is the way they go to the washroom. Enlin, as expected, this mighty figure was no ordinary person. There was no way he could communicate with him. Enlin took a deep breath. Forget it. I'm not ready to become a celestial maiden yet. I'm not going to become a celestial maiden, even if you beat me to death. So, Chun Chen asked. So, Enlin looked at the surging river before him and said, I want to experience the most heinous punishment in this world. Both Chen Shun and Shang Wan were struck by a sense of awe upon hearing this. Mr. Enlin, your curse sure is vicious. To think that it would force you to do something like this. A rare expression of shock appeared on Chun Chen's face. Enlin, it's all my fault. It's all my fault that you're so unlucky. Wah! Shangguan took the blame for the system and apologized profusely. Lin was speechless. If he had known this was going to happen, he wouldn't have told her about the system's curse. Well, it was a good way to describe the system as a curse. Even though it was very tragic to be screwed over by the system, as long as he didn't die, he would still be able to reap a lot of rewards. With that in mind, he arrived at the edge of the river. Senior student Chun Chun, I've only entered one of the images in the river. Will I really survive if I die in there? And Lin asked. Chun Chun nodded upon hearing this. You probably won't die. After all, the heavenly time, God, wanted to drag us into this river when she tried to take us down with her. She said that she's going to kill us billions of times, so she's not going to let you off so easily. And Lin's face convulsed upon hearing this. This heavenly time, God, really is vicious. But this kind of viciousness actually made me feel at ease now. Chun Chun nodded. You just have to activate the void body mantra that I gave you at the instant of your resurrection, and you'll be able to escape from the river. And Lin heaved a sigh of relief upon hearing this. In reality, the system definitely wouldn't issue a mission that required certain death, which was why he was so confident in his decision to enter the river. He stood on the shore and looked at the river. All of the heinous punishments in this world flashed before his eyes. If he were to experience any of them in person, they would leave a shadow in his heart for the rest of his life. His biggest problem now was which one to choose. The system wanted him to die once, and he was choosing how he was going to die. And Lin stood on the shore and looked at the river for a full 10 minutes. If there was such a thing as being skinned and having one's tendons pulled out, he would have jumped in a long time ago. The problem was that there wasn't. All of the tortures displayed on the river were thousands of times more terrifying than being skinned and having one's tendons pulled out. All of a sudden, he was greeted by an extremely refreshing and tranquil image. There was sunlight and grass in the image, creating a very refreshing and natural scene. This was a harmonious and natural scene without any torture. Holy F***CK. Did I just win the lottery? And Lin's eyes lit up as he leaped toward the image. It's you. Chapter 1453. Such a refreshing and natural scene was something that could only be encountered by chance. It rose from a mud, but was not tainted. It was clear and pure, but not demonic. Don't miss this opportunity. Wait for 1,000 years. Countless thoughts flashed through in Lin's mind as he leaped toward that scene. However, there was one thing that didn't change, and that was that he was definitely going to enter this world. The river detected Lin's advance, and it unleashed the power of time to draw him into the scene. Lin felt a burst of power enshrouding his entire body, and he was struck by a rush of dizziness as the entire world returned to chaos. Chun Chun jumped into the river and intercepted that section of the river of time in order to prevent it from getting too far away before waiting for Lin to return. Isn't Lin going to be all right? Shangguan, he was a little concerned. He'll be fine. He'll be able to return after he truly dies in there. Chun Chun replied in an indifferent voice. Shangguan, he was speechless. What the hell was that supposed to mean? However, this scene was indeed very refreshing. Perhaps Lin would be able to die a happy death. Shangguan thought to herself. The flow of time in the river was very different from here, so Lin would most likely be able to return very soon. The two of them waited silently on the shore, within a vast expanse of darkness and chaos. His consciousness was slowly returning. Lin opened his bleary eyes. Warm sunlight shone down upon him, making him feel very warm and comfortable. The sky was blue, the clouds were light, and the breeze was refreshing. My God, is this heaven? Lin was ecstatic. He had arrived in a brand new world, and he was very excited. He then saw grass that was about as tall as a grown man, as well as extremely massive insects. Oh, wait a minute. Something doesn't seem right. A sense of foreboding suddenly welled up in Lin's heart. He tried to move his body, only to find that his body was rooted to the ground. He looked at the grass next door and saw his own green and tender body reflected in the dew. Then, he fell into a long silence. I become a blade of grass? And Lin almost threw up a mouthful of chloroplasts upon this discovery. Holy F asterisk CK. So the reason why the scene was so refreshing was because he could only be a blade of grass here. What was a blade of grass? Ants in the world of plants. In the ecosphere, they were the most ordinary and lowly creatures, the bottom of the food chain. Just as Lin was about to collapse, he suddenly came to a realization. However, compared to the other tortures in the river scene, being a blade of grass, living an ordinary and boring life did not seem to be a particularly terrible thing. With this thought, Lin immediately felt relieved. That's right, that's great. He liked the way it unfolded. Most importantly, although he was a blade of grass and had no eyes, ears, mouth, or nose, he had all 5 senses. He could enjoy the beautiful natural scenery, feel the cool breeze, feel the warm sunlight, and smell the fragrance of flowers not far away. This kind of life could be considered to be comfortable. Isn't it good to be grass? Nonsense. He was obviously very happy, and Lin was even beginning to understand why Little Red was so lazy. With such a body, it was really easy to become lazy and salted fish. It was all because it was too comfortable. At this moment, a gust of wind blew over. Hoo-hoo-hoo-ah! And Lin instantly screamed as a tearing pain came from his waist. His old waist was bent by the gust of wind, just like a friend with weak muscles and bones who was forcefully squashed. Right now, he was even more miserable as his body was squashed into a U-shape. The gust of wind lasted for a whole hour, and Lin felt that he could not straighten his old waist. He was exhausted both physically and mentally. It seemed that it was not so easy to be a blade of grass. And Lin silently sighed in his heart. At this moment, layers of dark clouds had gathered in the sky. There was nothing wrong with the wind and rain. And Lin suffered a torment. Before he could catch his breath, the sky began to rain. It was good that it rained. He could replenish his water. After being tortured by the wind for so long, was it finally going to give him some benefits? Just like this, the sky began to rain, and it was a rainstorm. And Lin happily absorbed the rainwater. At first, he felt very comfortable, but soon he felt that something was wrong. The rain was actually a rainstorm. When the water filled his body, the rainwater continued to pour onto his body. Gurgle, gurgle, help, gurgle, gurgle, and Lin struggled to twist his body. He did not want to drink so much water. But the rainstorm covered the whole world. How could he hide, even if he wanted to? The rainwater crazily poured into Lin's body, making him feel like he was drowning. The strong feeling of suffocation made him want to die. A huge amount of water supported his body, making him extremely swollen and uncomfortable. Is this the feeling of death? Am I finally going to die? Although it was very painful, and Lin felt that dying like this was not a bad thing. 2 hours later, the rain stopped, and Lin's head was pressed against the ground. He was half dead, but he managed to survive. Mother asterisk why am I alive? And Lin did not feel very happy to have his life back. He felt that it was good to end like this and then leave this world. However, since he was fine, he would live a good life and face the sun every day. The warm sun shone on the earth. This made Lin feel that the sun always came after the storm. But soon, he found something wrong again. Damn it, why is it so hot? He suddenly realized that it seemed to be summer now. The blazing sun scorched the earth. The rainwater on the ground evaporated, and the high temperature made the water vapor somewhat distorted. Not only did it not cool him, but it also made it more stuffy and uncomfortable the next day. This situation became even more terrifying. Because of the lack of water and the increasingly hot sun, and Lin's skin felt like it was being burned by fire. It was burning and the pain was unbearable. So hot, so thirsty, I'm going to die. I'm really going to die, and Lin's whole body was withered, and the water in his body had been dried up. He felt like he was walking alone in the desert. Not only was he very thirsty, but he was also being roasted by fire. He was like a walking corpse, like a mummy. He was wrong. This punishment of becoming a grass was not happiness at all. It was clearly taking his life. The key was that the vitality of the grass was particularly tenacious. Every time, he was tortured to the point of wandering between life and death. In the end, he did not die and continued to endure the torture. In this way, Lin was broken by the strong wind, suffocated by the heavy rain, burned by the scorching sun. He felt like he was going to die every time. Unfortunately, he couldn't move, couldn't resist, and could only endure silently. He was tortured to the point of hovering between life and death, day after day, and Lin came to a realization. In the scene of the river, how could there be a real heaven? One should not look at things on the surface. In fact, all the scenes were purgatory. When Lin thought that this was the limit, something even more terrifying happened. Chapter 1454. Day after day of life and death torture and the threat of nature. And Lin felt that this was painful enough until one day, when he was exposed to the sun. Suddenly, a black ladybug crawled along his body. The stinger pricked his body, making him feel a bit itchy and painful. But that wasn't the main point. It crawled to Lin's head, suddenly opened its sharp mouth, and pierced in. Ah! And Lin screamed in pain, as if his brain had been pierced. The ladybug was still sucking to its heart's content, and Lin's brain was sucked away by the ladybug. After a period of inhumane torture, the ladybug ate its fill and finally flew away. And Lin's brain was already dry, and he continued to be exposed to the sun with a lifeless expression. Although he didn't die, that kind of torture wasn't something a human could endure. Before the first wave subsided, another wave arose. And Lin, who had just been visited by the ladybug, was suddenly attacked by an even more ferocious insect. A locust. When the locust passed through, not even a blade of grass would grow. The locust was even more violent than the ladybug as it tore at Lin's body. And Lin's sharp head was eaten by the locust, and his body also felt like it was being torn apart. He was torn to pieces by the locust, ravaged. The brutal ravaging of the grass path, the experience of having his body torn apart and then being chewed on was simply terrifying. After the locust ate its fill, it left the scarred little grass behind and flew away in satisfaction. Little grass and's face streamed with tears. He secretly swore that he would never be a little grass again in his next life. It was one thing to be bullied by the terrifying natural environment, but he was also bullied by all kinds of cruel insects. Was there any justice in this world? And Lin grumbled incessantly as he recovered from his injuries. The intense pain accompanied him, but he couldn't die. The torture was far from over. Not only did the insects bully him, but even the various microorganisms wanted to bully him. Some of the microorganisms made him itch all over, some sucked his nutrients, and some made his body rot. He originally thought that he would only be tortured by nature. Now it seemed that Lin had been too naive. As the bottom of the food chain, Xiao Xiao and could be bullied by anyone. Even if the smallest ant wanted to take a bite out of Lin, it would take a bite out of Lin. It would even cast a disdainful glance at him from time to time, but he couldn't do anything about it. Since when had the act tough, Wang experienced such grievances? Even a mere ant could torture him. At this time, Lin deeply understood that Xiao Cao's life wasn't easy. No wonder there used to be a sign hanging in the park telling people to take care of the flowers and plants and not to step on them. Xiao Cao's life was already so difficult, yet you still want to step on her? Did they have to be so cruel? Did they have to be so inhumane? And Lin felt that he had been tortured to the point that he was a little crazy, and his imagination kept running wild. However, this torture was far from over. The torment of the harsh environment, the biting of various insects, and the erosion of microorganisms continued. And Lin felt that he could die several times a day, but he stubbornly survived. This damned tenacity. After countless days of torment, the seasons changed and autumn came. And Lin gradually aged. His tender green body began to turn yellow, and the pain of aging spread throughout his body. And Lin felt that dying of old age was indeed a very good way to die. Things didn't go as he wished. The land was too dry, and it caught fire. The fire spread all the way. And Lin looked at the raging fire with a look of horror, unable to do anything to resist. A blade of grass, under such a terrifying flame, couldn't do anything but accept its fate. Just like that, and Lin actually experienced the feeling of being burned by a raging fire. "Ah, it hurts, help!" And Lin screamed hysterically. The flame scorched every inch of his skin and destroyed every cell. This kind of pain was too terrifying, and it wasn't something that a human could endure. The raging fire burned his body, and Lin finally turned into ashes. He thought that everything was going to end. In the end, his consciousness shifted to the ground, where the grass's roots were. And Lin, was there no end to it? Was there no end to it? And Lin was on the verge of a mental breakdown as he roared. No one answered him. There were only the bugs and microorganisms underground that continued to bully him. He couldn't die yet, so he desperately absorbed the nutrients underground. The wildfire couldn't burn away the grass, and the spring wind blew again. And Lin experienced countless struggles where he was almost frozen to death before sprouting again. He slowly grew taller and tenaciously grew again. To his astonishment, he discovered that he had grown taller. He was even taller than when he was the tallest last year. Not only had he grown taller, but he had also become stronger. Perhaps this was the physique of a blade of grass. The more it was ravaged, the more resilient it became, and the more powerful it could become. And Lin had become more powerful. Now, he couldn't be called Little Grass, and please call him Big Grassin. He was still exposed to the elements and was tortured by all types of living beings. However, none of this could stop his determination to grow stronger. At this moment, and Lin also saw hope. Hope for transcendence. What would happen if he continued to grow? Would he become a spirit? Or would he become strong enough to resist all kinds of natural harm? With a goal in mind, and Lin worked even harder. Under his indomitable struggle, there was indeed improvement. He was really getting stronger and stronger. Although he would still be bitten all over by the bugs, he had a certain level of resistance to the violent storms and scorching sun. He firmly believed that with his hard work, tomorrow would be better. He was ravaged day by day, but he worked hard to grow day by day. Spring, summer, autumn, and winter, year after year. And Lin became more and more outstanding. He felt that he was not far from becoming a spirit. Once he became a spirit, he would torture the bugs that had bullied him in the past 100 or 1,000 times more. He wanted to kill those ants, ladybugs, sticky bugs, locusts, and Lin had already made up his mind. Why had he worked so hard? Wasn't it because he was waiting for that day to come? Big Grass and thrived and died thousands of times. But the more he was tortured, the fiercer he became. He worked harder and harder, and he was almost about to achieve enlightenment. One morning, the sun was shining brightly. I've endured countless life and death sufferings and put in so much effort. The day is finally right before my eyes. And Lin muttered to himself. This was a counterattack, a legendary counterattack of an existence at the bottom of the food chain. Right at this moment, the sky suddenly darkened. And Lin turned his gaze to the sky and saw a palm covering the entire sky. It was descending and grabbing onto his body, trying to grab him. No! And Lin roared in horror. Whoosh! Extreme pain shot through his entire body. And Lin's body had been uprooted. A voice reverberated in his ears like a demon. He. This grass is really strong. I can use it to make soup. It should taste good. Chapter 1455. And Chao had never thought that he would be uprooted one day. He had endured countless cruel life and death tortures and struggled through countless life and death situations. He had finally made some progress, only to be uprooted and used to make soup? Shoot the grass that stands out? No. How can the heavens play tricks on me like this? I refuse to accept this. I refuse to accept this. And Lin roared incessantly and was on the verge of a mental breakdown. The most tragic thing was not being trampled upon. Rather, when he finally had a glimmer of hope, the heavens would suddenly descend upon him and crush his hopes. This kind of mental blow was enough to destroy a person. And Lin was still roaring with indignation, but no one paid attention to the anguished wails of a blade of grass. A middle-aged man held a blade of grass in his hand as he hurried home. And Lin was tossed into a basket, upon which there were also a few other vegetable companions in the same plight. He saw that he had been brought into a small house in a manor. Daddy, you're back? What kind of delicious game did you pick today? A little girl in plain clothes ran out and pounced on the uncle like a Lolita tiger. Hey, Xiao, we had a good harvest today. I even picked a very large blade of grass with a lot of spiritual energy. I'll make some delicious food for you tonight. The middle-aged man held the little girl in his arms and chuckled. Yay, Daddy is the best. The little girl yelled excitedly. The middle-aged man smiled. Did you cultivate and study hard today? Yes, Mommy praised me. The little girl led the middle-aged man into the house and said in a crisp voice, She praised me for being diligent and learning fast. Within the room, a beautiful woman was busy embroidering. You're back. The woman smiled warmly. Chuang stop embroidering and go cook. The middle-aged man placed the basket on the table with a proud expression on his face. We had a good harvest today. Let's have a feast. And Lin silently looked at the vegetable brothers beside him. What kind of feast is this? There's not even a piece of meat. Are they vegan? He only came to his senses a moment later and was shocked. Cooking? Holy F***CK. Isn't he going to kill me? The woman opened the basket and saw Lin. She screamed, Oh my God, what a big stalk of grass. It looks delicious. Lin, hubby is the best. The woman hugged the uncle and kissed him excitedly. I will definitely make this grass tastier than the most delicious meat in the world. Then this is really good news for a vegetarian like me. The middle-aged man also smiled and said proudly, All living beings are equal. We love other living beings so much, so this blade of grass must be a gift from the heavens. Lin almost spat out a mouthful of blood. All living things are equal? Are you not treating me, big grass, as a living being? Were they looking down on grass? I'm still alive, so why should I be eaten by you? Advocate for equality, please go photosynthesize. Lin was still roaring indignantly, but the woman hummed a tune as she placed his body on the chopping board and cut him into pieces with a kitchen knife. Lin almost fainted from the excruciating pain of having his body sliced into pieces. He saw his broken body being placed into a pot of oil, and an even more terrifying pain surged through his entire body. One wouldn't be able to understand how terrifying this pot of oil was unless they experienced it themselves. Almost every inch of his skin cracked in the frying process, and Lin screamed in pain as his consciousness gradually blurred. Was this the end of the grass's life? That was what he was thinking. Then he felt his body being scooped up and placed on a plate. Lin, he didn't die even after all that. Oh my God, do you have to bully the grass like this? Lin was about to go crazy. I've already climbed a mountain of knives and been thrown into a pot of oil, and I'm already cooked. I didn't die even after all that. Am I still grass? Am I King grass spirit? Wait a minute, grass spirit. And Lin thought back to his experience of constantly becoming more powerful. Could it be that his desperate struggle to become stronger had caused his body to become stronger, resulting in him being unable to die, even if he was cooked? At the same time, he was stuck in the awkward situation of not being able to transcend. Tears instantly streamed down Lin's face. Was this what he deserved? Thus, he was placed on the dining table. The three vegetarians were all rubbing their palms together and drooling at him. Mommy, this grass smells so good. Little Cheen smacked her lips. With a gentle smile, the woman said, Little Cheen, you did well today. You can eat this grass as a reward. Yay, thank you, Mommy. Little Cheen became excited, and Lin shuddered at the thought of being eaten. No, don't eat me. I'm still a grass, I'm still alive. Why do you want to eat me? And Lin was in despair and begged for mercy. He really didn't dare to imagine what it would be like to be eaten in such a state. However, he also knew that his humble begging for mercy was futile. No one could hear his cries, and he was most likely going to die in despair. The little girl was just about to move her chopsticks toward Lin, but her chopsticks faltered in midair. Mommy! The little girl's bright eyes widened with incredulity. The grass on the plate is speaking. And Lin, everyone at the dining table instantly fell silent. And Lin felt as if he had grasped onto his last straw, and he yelled, That's right. I'm speaking. I'm still alive. Please don't eat me. What nonsense is this child saying? The middle-aged man's brows furrowed slightly. Are you serious, little Chin? The woman's expression was equally solemn. The little girl nodded. Yes. Little Chow said he's still alive and told us not to eat him. And Lin was almost moved to tears upon hearing this. Heavens! Finally, someone could hear him. He could finally not be eaten. He hurriedly thanked the little girl. Little Chin continued. He also thanked us for not eating him. The woman nodded with a solemn expression. Little Chin is a bit deranged. The middle-aged man also had a solemn expression. Take her to the mental hospital tomorrow. This child has probably encountered a problem with her cultivation. And Lin's eyes widened, and a sense of absurdity surged through his entire body. Wah, I'm not mentally ill. The little girl was about to cry, and she frantically ate the food on the plate, as if to prove that she wasn't mentally ill. Just like that, and Lin was picked up by the little girl and put into her mouth. His body was stirred by the little girl's fragrant tongue and ground by the little girl's teeth. If he had to describe it, it was like his body had been put into a meat grinder, but his consciousness hadn't disappeared, and the pain was still there. That kind of pain could no longer be described with words. That's right, and Lin was still eaten by the little girl. The heavens seemed to like to play a joke on him. Before torturing him, they always liked to give him a little hope. The human world wasn't worth it. Chapter 1456. And Lin no longer had anything left to live for. After experiencing an inhumane torture, his body was finally chewed up by the little girl and then swallowed into her stomach. What made him alarmed was that his life as a blade of grass hadn't ended even after reaching this point, and Lin was in despair. His vitality was not just tenacious, it was simply abnormal. It did not make sense at all. The torture he was suffering now was thousands of times more terrifying than he had imagined. The heavens had given him an immortal cheat. It was not out of kindness, but because they wanted him to not die so easily and then continue to suffer inhumane torture. What a vicious idea. And Lin followed the little girl's esophagus and came to her stomach. This was the first time he had entered the body of a human, and it was such a cute little girl. It was just that he entered with the body of a dying little grass. That feeling was not wonderful at all. It was simply hellish torture. The stomach acid was melting his body. The pain of his body melting made Lin almost go crazy. Then, Lin came to the little girl's small intestine. The wriggling and stirring of the small intestine was as if it was whipping Lin's corpse. The pancreatic juice secreted by the pancreas, and while secreted by the liver, kept breaking down his body. The key was that during the whole process, he actually felt an extremely terrifying and real pain. Could you imagine how painful and terrifying the process of a body being ground into pieces and then melted into juice was? This kind of pain was beyond his imagination. And Lin felt that he was being tortured to the point that he was a little stupid. Even his thoughts were not coherent, and his consciousness was gradually blurring. There was only one feeling in his heart, and that was pain, unparalleled pain. Heavens, is this the 18th level of hell? Why is it so painful to be a little grass? And Lin gradually fell into darkness in his doubts about the life of the grass. It was as if he had fallen into a bottomless abyss of sin, sinking and sinking. Finally, he returned to nothingness. I clearly chose a fresh and natural scene. Why would I encounter such terrifying torture in this scene? I am clearly just a blade of grass. What has a blade of grass experienced in its life? And Lin seemed to begin to understand why such a fresh and natural scene could be comparable to the other extremely evil scenes in the River of Time. In terms of pain alone, it was even more intense than the other images. The pain he suffered was 1,000,000 times greater than what he had suffered as a human. Ironically, the pain he was enduring was actually the most common thing in the world. Spring, summer, autumn, and winter, plants withered and flourished. The one who brought him the most pain and ended his life was a family of 3 who were vegetarians. It was as if there was nothing wrong with it, and everything was reasonable. However, it just so happened that Lin had tasted the most painful experience. Born in the cycle of reincarnation, strength determined form. If they were powerless and lived at the bottom of society, they would be powerless even if they were tortured to death by other beings who pretended to be kind. There was no such thing as absolute kindness in this world, only absolute power. The weak didn't even have the right to choose how they died, let alone being kind. And Lin had gained a different understanding from the life of the lowliest grass. His consciousness began to return. There was the sound of water flowing beside his ears. A force suddenly appeared and fiercely pulled at his body. That force contained an irresistible force, as if it wanted him to fall into another cycle of reincarnation. A thought suddenly occurred to Enlin, and he immediately unleashed his void body mantra. His body instantly became illusionary, and the power grabbed onto thin air. Phew! Enlin heaved a sigh of relief as he was almost sucked into another image. How terrifying! He almost went crazy after tasting the most evil punishment in the world once. If he were to experience it again, he might not be able to wake up from the torture. And Lin abruptly rose into the air. Boom! Water splashed violently. And Lin appeared above the river of time again before drifting down onto the shore. Mr. Enlin, are you all right? Chun Chun and Shangwan immediately made their way over to him with concern on their faces. Aside from concern, there was also a hint of admiration on their faces. That's right, anyone who dared to enter the images of the River of Time was extremely bad *SS. At the very least, Chun Chun and Shangwan didn't dare to be as fearless as Enlin. They would rather become celestial maidens than enter the images. I'm all right. I need some time to recover. Enlin instinctively recoiled with a pale expression at the sight of Chun Chun and Shangwan. Chun Chun was a little perplexed. Mr. Enlin, why do I feel like you're a little scared of me? Nonsense. Why would I be scared of you? Enlin retorted in a feeble voice. Chun Chun, Enlin, are you all right? Shangwan, was a little concerned, and she made her way over to Enlin before asking in a gentle voice. Don't come near me. Don't eat me. Enlin instinctively stumbled back with a horrified expression at the sight of Shangwan Yi's mouth. Shangwan, is this what you mean by, I'm all right? What happened in the images? Chun Chun was even more curious upon seeing this. They knew that Enlin had to have experienced some kind of tragedy to have become like this. Enlin retreated a distance away and swallowed an immortal pill to calm himself down before speaking with lingering fear in his heart. I became a blade of grass there. A blade of grass? Chun murmured. Isn't that pretty good? Shangwan expressed her opinion. Pretty good? Hee. A tragic smile appeared on Enlin's face. That's what I thought as well. Thus, Enlin recounted how he regained the senses of a human, how his body was ravaged by gale-force winds, how he was sucked dry by the sun, how he was drowned, how he was bitten by insects, how his body was torn apart by germs, how he was set ablaze, how he was sliced into pieces, how he was cooked in oil, how he was eaten, and how he even entered his digestive system. Chun Chen's expressionless face was once again filled with shock. Shangwan was completely dumbstruck, and chills ran down her spine. Is this something a blade of grass should experience? Chun Chen was unable to maintain his composure any longer. At the same time, he was feeling a little relieved that he had resisted the urge to use his own body to try out the images. Enlin, tears welled up in Shangwan Yi's eyes. It's all my fault. This senior sister was trying to take the blame on herself again. Tears welled up in Enlin's eyes as he recalled his own experiences. I don't even know how I survived all these years. Right at this moment, a fragrant scent wafted toward him. A soft and cool body pressed itself against him. It was Shangwan Yi's embrace. It's all right, Enlin. It's all in the past now. Shangwan hugged the trembling Enlin like a mother doting on her child as she consoled him. Enlin gradually found a sense of security in Shangwan Yi's arms. Xiao Chao still hadn't fully recovered from the shock and exhaustion, and he was finally beginning to feel sleepy. I'm going to sleep. All right, go to sleep. Shangwan spoke in a gentle voice. Thus, Enlin fell into a deep sleep in Shangwan Yi's arms. Chapter 1457. Just as Lin fell asleep, a ding-dong chimed from the system. Congratulations, host, for completing the special mission. Now bestowing upon you the second stage of the God cultivation method in true intent. All of a sudden, boundless information imbued with true intent flowed into Lin's body in a frenzy. The air around him began to churn. Shang Yi's expression suddenly shifted as she held Lin in her arms. What's going on? Why do I feel like Lin is becoming more powerful? Chen Shen's face convulsed slightly. You can become more powerful by sleeping. This strange phenomenon continued, and Lin fell asleep in Shang Yi's soft arms, as if he was completely oblivious to what was happening. Shang Yi and Chun Chun both stared at the more powerful Lin with astonishment etched on their faces. The process didn't last very long before everything returned to normal. Shang Yi sat with her legs crossed and rested Lin's head on her lap with a warm smile on her face as she stroked Lin's hair in an affectionate manner. Lin is usually a troublemaker, but who would have thought that he would be so calm and obedient when he sleeps? He didn't even wake up from the violent changes just then. I'm cold, Lin murmured as he flipped over and wrapped his arms around Shang Yi's slender waist. He even rubbed his head against Shang Yi's body, as if he was feeling a little cold. Shang, she unleashed a flame technique with a resigned expression to warm up Lin's body. Snow maidens had cold attributes to begin with, so the ice matriarch had no choice but to unleash her weakest flame technique to warm up Lin's body. Chun Chun nodded upon seeing this. Lin is probably too exhausted. The punishment he suffered in the image is simply too terrifying. It's a good thing for him to have a good night's sleep. He stood up and walked toward the river again as he spoke. It's time for me to set off as well. You can stay here and look after Lin for now. Shang Yi nodded in response. She had been the one to look after Lin in the past, and now that she had experience in this, it wouldn't be a problem for her to look after him for a while longer. Chun Chun jumped into the river again to search for clues. Within a boundless golden space, peace and quiet returned. The flames flickered, and Lin's slumber was exceptionally peaceful. During this period, there were continuous splashes. The water splashed violently, and the exhausted celestial emperor flew out of the river. He was astonished to see Lin sleeping with his head on Shang Yi's lap. Shang Yi hurriedly explained the situation, to which the celestial arch was enlightened before becoming even more astonished. He even praised Lin as a rare warrior of the kingdom of the 9 states. The celestial arch rested for a while before continuing to dive down to search for clues. Water splashed violently, and Meng Ji flew out of the river with a slightly pale expression. She was astonished to see Lin sleeping with his head on Shang Yi's legs. Shang Yi hurriedly explained everything to Meng Ji. Meng Ji was enlightened upon hearing this, and she was even more astonished upon hearing this. She couldn't help but marvel at Lin's bravery. Even among the entire Snow Maiden race, no one could match up to him. Meng Ji rested for a while before continuing to dive deeper in search of clues. Not long later, another wave of water splashed, and the elegant and graceful empress returned from the river, stepping on the mysterious ice. She was astonished to see Lin sleeping with his head on Shang Yi's legs. Shang Yi hurriedly explained everything to the great empress. The great empress was enlightened upon hearing this, and she was even more astonished upon seeing Lin's bravery. However, the great empress was still quite confused. Why was Lin sleeping with Shang Yi in her arms? A light blush appeared on Shang Yi's face. He's more comfortable this way, and I can use my fire control technique to keep him warm. The great empress didn't know what to say upon seeing this. She meditated on the spot to recover her energy, and after a period of rest, she dove down again. Shang Yi looked at the sleeping Lin, and she caressed Lin's cheek with a gentle smile on her face. Time flew by. 2 days later, Lin finally began to awaken. When he woke up, he was greeted by the sight of an extremely beautiful woman. She was looking down at him with a pair of clear and gentle eyes that were filled with concern. You're awake? How do you feel? Much better. It had been a long time since Lin had such a good night's sleep. Thinking back to his life as a blade of grass, he felt extremely blessed. He stood up and stretched his body, upon which he suddenly detected a lingering fragrance on his body that was similar to Shangguan Yi's. An apologetic expression appeared on Lin's face. "I'm sorry for making you take care of me while I was asleep. It's all right, as long as you're all right." Shangguan Yi's smile remained on her face. Lin felt as if all of his fatigue had been completely swept away, as if this nap had some kind of miraculous power that could cleanse his body of all negative effects. Of course, the painful memories of his time as a blade of grass had left a deep scar in his mind, and he felt like he would never be able to forget it for the rest of his life. Lin then turned his attention to his system to find that he had already obtained the second stage of the Yin God cultivation method, as well as the Heavenly Ghost Palm. The Heavenly Ghost Palm was imbued with extremely powerful Yin-type power and was constructed from the resentment of billions of malicious ghosts. When unleashed at full force, it could inflict excruciating pain upon its opponent. As he became more powerful, he would even be able to unleash the power of the River of Time. Even Lin couldn't help but draw a sharp intake of breath upon seeing this. This spell technique of his seemed to be a little dangerous. He didn't know whether it was powerful or not, but when it came to torture, his Heavenly Ghost Palm was definitely the most powerful spell technique he knew. The reason for this was that he had experienced the Heavenly Ghost Palm in person, so he knew just how terrifying it was. It was definitely the most terrifying form of torture in this world. If I want others to go to hell, I have to go to hell first. Lin murmured to himself. The system wanted him to know just how bad *SS its spell technique was, so it had to let him experience it first. Of course, this was only his speculation. Perhaps the system wanted to enter the River of Time and enter that world through Lin so that it could absorb something and analyze something. Or perhaps the system was just trying to screw him over. Lin's heart sank again with this in mind. He tried to divert his attention. "By the way, how long has it been since we entered this strange space?" Shangguan Yi blinked and thought for a moment before replying. "You were unconscious for 3 days after entering the space, then 18 days after entering the image of the River of Time, and you slept for another 2 days after coming out. Hence, it's been 23 days since we entered this space. I've only been in the image of the River of Time for 18 days? Lin was astonished. "I thought you were tortured for 18 years. Furthermore, this experience was extremely realistic. It was as if he had gone to a real world and been tortured for 18 years. Days feel like years." Shangguan Yi hesitated momentarily. Tears welled up in Lin's eyes. "No, it's 18 years with 4 seasons." Shangguan Yi's heart was suddenly aching for Lin again. She really wanted to hug Lin again. So 1 day here is equivalent to 1 year in that world? Does time flow differently? Shangguan Yi thought about this for a moment and decided that it wasn't too far-fetched. After all, the power of time was the most abundant in this space, so it wouldn't be strange for anything to happen here. A thought suddenly occurred to Shangguan Yi. The power of time here is so abundant. Would there be any changes when we cultivate here? Chapter 1458. You want me to cultivate in this strange space? Lin blinked in confusion. He immediately got to work. Shangguan immediately sat down with her legs crossed and activated her ice matriarch mantra. A blue power of frost converged toward her like a vortex. Energy surged through the air for over 50 kilometers, and even the ground seemed to have sensed it as it glowed with a faint light and flashed at an extremely slow speed. Lin could sense some kind of resonance from the light. Shangguan Yi opened her eyes a moment later with excitement in her eyes. As expected, the flow of energy here has also accelerated after the power of time has become more concentrated. Cultivating here with the Ice Matriarch mantra is several hundred times faster than it was before. Several hundred times faster? Lin drew a sharp intake of breath. He knew what this entailed. This meant that they had arrived at a superb cultivation paradise. Fortune and misfortune really do come hand in hand. Shangguan Yi was extremely touched as she turned to Enlin with glowing eyes. Hurry up and cultivate with me. This is a rare opportunity. Fortune and misfortune? Enlin's lips twitched slightly. Fortune and misfortune were the same for her, but not for him. He didn't know how to cultivate normally, so this type of cultivation was completely useless to him. Enlin, what's wrong? Why do you look so pale? Shangguan, he was just elated to discover that Enlin seemed to be a little distressed. Aren't you going to cultivate with me? She asked. Enlin's lips twitched. No, my cultivation is different from yours. I can't explain why it's different, but I'm afraid I won't be able to cultivate here. Really? That's a pity. Shangguan, he turned to Enlin with a sympathetic expression. Is there anything I can help you with? You can't just bring a few Dao integration stage super mighty figures here to be beaten in a submission by me, can you? Enlin spoke with a speechless expression. He was quite frustrated at the thought of how he had to beat 9 Dao integration stage super mighty figures in a submission in order to progress to the return to void intermediate stage. Every time he battled a Dao integration stage super mighty figure, he would have to risk his life 9 times now. One had to realize that he was only a mere return to void stage cultivator. Bringing a Dao integration stage super mighty figure here, Shangguan Yi's mouth gaped open slightly, and she blinked with a hesitant expression. Aren't the Great Empress and the Celestial Arch only at the Dao integration stage? When Enlin heard this, he was stunned for a moment before his eyes lit up. Yes, why didn't he realize it? Weren't the Celestial Arch and the Great Empress only Dao integration stage super mighty figures? Wouldn't I be able to complete the mission by beating them into submission? He kept looking into the distance, almost forgetting that he had mission materials beside him. Enlin came to a sudden realization, and he looked at Shangguan Yi with excitement and gratitude. This is great. You've opened a door to a whole new world for me. Shangguan Yi pursed her lips into a smile upon seeing Enlin's elated expression. Before long, the Celestial Arch and the Great Empress returned from the River of Time. How did it go? Did you find any clues? Enlin made his way over to them. A little. I can sense a spatial flaw in each and every world. Perhaps if we gather our power, we can break through the barrier between the worlds and force our way into that world. The Celestial Arch replied. Enlin was ecstatic upon hearing this. This was indeed a major breakthrough. If he could break through the world and force his way into it, then he wouldn't have to transform into a blade of grass to enter that world. The Great Empress also chimed in. I've discovered that there's some kind of connection between all of the worlds and the images. It's like an extremely massive formation that's formed naturally. All of the worlds in which the images are situated are independent yet interconnected, like planets in the starry sky. With so many planets gathered together, it's like a sea of stars. A sea of stars. And Lin thought about this for a moment before his eyes lit up. The sea of stars is boundless and boundless, but there's always a pattern to it. Just like how galaxies always have a center and an edge. The Taichu continent is the center of this world, so it's very likely that the center of all of these images is... That's right, it's the world of the Taichu continent. The Great Empress nodded. This was a major discovery. This discovery ignited hope in everyone's hearts. During their break, Enlin made a request to the Great Empress and the Celestial Arch. You want us to fight you? The Celestial Arch was astonished, and then pretend to be beaten into submission by you? The Great Empress also stared at Enlin with incredulity on her face. Enlin nodded with an extremely solemn expression. That's right. This is also a part of my cultivation, so I'll be counting on you. As a result, the sound of spells rumbled in this special space. Enlin is so powerful. I concede. The Great Empress was blasted flying, and her imperial robe was disheveled, revealing her snowy white shoulders as she conceded with a triumphant expression. War God Enlin is too powerful. I concede. The Celestial Arch was also blasted flying by Enlin's spell technique, and he tumbled to the ground in an extremely disheveled manner. Enlin slowly withdrew his fist, as if he were an invincible war god. He turned toward his system to find that there was no response from it. What's going on? The system clearly said that I would only have to beat a Tao integration stage living being into submission to complete the mission. And Lin was confused. Could it be that beating a Tao integration stage living being like this doesn't really count as beating a true opponent into submission? Could it be that the Celestial Arch and the Great Empress didn't truly concede? And Lin had discovered the crux of the matter, and he spoke to the disheveled Celestial Arch and the Great Empress. How about this? You two unleash your full power, and I'm going to beat you into submission. Boom, boom, boom. Energy surged violently, and spell techniques erupted once again. Soon, and Lin had been beaten into submission by the Celestial Arch and the Great Empress, and Lin lay on the ground, and he began to doubt his own life. No, it's not that I'm too weak, it's that they're too powerful. The Great Empress was one of the most powerful Tao integration stage super mighty figures, and the Celestial Arch was at the pinnacle of the Tao integration stage. That must be it. And Lin continued to console himself. In reality, if he used the power of the heavenly gods, then there really was a chance that he could beat the Celestial Arch and the Great Empress into submission. However, this wasn't a battle of life and death. He couldn't just toss a F*King nuclear bomb at them, could he? Thus, Lin was destined to achieve nothing in this place. The Celestial Arch and the Great Empress also discovered that cultivating in this space allowed them to progress at an astonishing rate, and they immediately began to cultivate with elation. Time passed by one day after another. When everyone was in good condition, they would enter the river to search for clues, and when they were in bad condition, they would meditate and cultivate on the banks of the river. And Lin had nothing to do, so he decided to follow the Celestial Arch and the others into the river to search for clues. However, just as he activated his void body mantra and stepped into the river, the system, which had only been active for a short while, suddenly lit up again, and Lin's body shuddered, and he almost cursed out loud. He was still traumatized by the fact that he had become a blade of grass, and he still wanted to F*King do it. He thought about it for a moment before cursing. F*CKU system. Chapter 1459. And Lin cursed for a while. In the end, he still had to open the system interface with tears in his eyes. Detected that host has come into contact with the essential power of time. Now assigning the following special mission. The power of the heavenly gods has been returned to the heavenly Tao, but there is still a chance to intercept the residual power of time left in the river after the power of time was shattered. Absorb enough power of time, and you will have a chance to learn a time-type technique. Mission success. Learn a time-type technique at the heavenly Tao level. Mission failure. If you fail, so be it. I won't do anything to you. Note, the residual power of time can be detected using the divine inspection technique and absorbed using the divine plunder technique. The residual power of time will completely disappear after 30 days. And Lin was almost moved to tears upon seeing this special mission. If you fail, so be it. I won't do anything to you. These words were like the warm sun of spring, warming up in Lin's wounded heart. These words were a model for the system world. Since when did my system become so nice? And Lin was extremely flattered. Could it be that the system couldn't bear to issue him a punishment mission after seeing him turn into a blade of grass? In any case, this was a good thing. He was elated, but he was also a little perplexed. Aside from the system's sudden kindness, even its tone seemed to have become more humane. What was going on? Could it be that the system was in a good mood? System, are you there? And Lin asked in his mind. Silence reigned, and Lin heaved a forlorn sigh. He had thought that the system had come back to life. If the system had come back to life, he would be able to ask some questions that he had been hiding in his heart for a long time. For example, did he accidentally dig up the system's ancestral grave? If not, why did the system have to screw him over? It would be even better if he could trick the system into coming out and give a good beating. And Lin was indulging in his own fantasies, and a joyful smile appeared on his face. He had even forgotten about his plan to enter the river to absorb the power of time. The system flashed violently in his mind a few times before he came to his senses. He activated the void body mantra again before stepping into the river of time. After entering the river of time, he could clearly see the various worlds within the images. It was as if the 2D images had been transformed into a realistic 3D world. Not only that, but he could also sense the unique attributes of each world. No wonder Chun Chun and the Celestial Arch both entered the river to search for clues. There are more things to see in the river, and Lin mused. He immediately activated his divine inspection technique as he spoke. And Lin's eyes turned white, and the world in his eyes changed. Not only did the image become clearer, but he could also sense a very special energy flowing endlessly. It had existed for all eternity and was indestructible. It encompassed the entire universe and was everywhere. This energy followed the direction of the river and flowed according to a specific trajectory. He couldn't see the beginning, nor could he see the end. He couldn't make it stop or change its direction. Its very existence is the truth. And Lin came to a realization. He must have sensed time from another angle. One scene after another flowed past him. He knew that behind each scene, there was a world. In other words, it was not as simple as an image. It was very likely to be an entrance to the real world, but the way it was displayed was a little special. There's a golden speck of light up ahead. And Lin focused his gaze. He could sense that the golden speck of light was converging with some kind of special power. Golden vein patterns appeared on his forehead, forming an ancient eye. Divine plunder technique. A peculiar golden ripple proliferated forth. The golden speck of light seemed to be drawn by some kind of power, and it shuddered slightly before voluntarily drifting toward Lin's body before fusing into his body. Gasp! That feels good. And Lin felt his entire body soften as a type of power filled his entire body. He immediately felt rejuvenated, as if he had become several years younger. Is this the power of time? What a wonderful feeling. I feel like my entire body has been revitalized after eating a speck of light. And Lin's eyes lit up even more. Even if I don't awaken any spell techniques, I'll still be able to absorb a few more of these specks of light. Thus, he began to capture more specks of light in the river. Using the divine plunder technique in this special space allowed him to recover extremely quickly. Not only did his cultivation speed increase by several hundred times, even his spell technique cooldowns were shortened by several hundred times. And Lin was able to absorb several hundred specks of light in a single day. A day later, everyone flew out of the river with exhausted expressions. And Lin was the only one who flew out of the river in high spirits. A bewildered expression appeared on the celestial Thearch's face. And Lin, are you all right? What happened? Shangwan, he was also quite concerned. You don't look too good, the great empress chimed in. They were all in the river, so why wasn't Lin the only one who was feeling so good? This wasn't cultivation at all. Don't worry, I'm fine. It's all because I can absorb some kind of power from the river when I'm searching for clues. And Lin explained with a buoyant smile. You can absorb the power of the river of time? Chun Chin's eyes lit up. Everyone else was also in disbelief. However, they weren't going to pry any further. After all, and Lin had a lot of secrets. Not taking into account everything else, he had a lot of secrets as well. However, no one was going to pry into his secrets. What needed to be said would be said when the time was right. After resting for a while, everyone continued to search for clues in the river. And Lin also followed along. He didn't actually need to rest at all. All he wanted to do was to see if everyone else had discovered any clues. Time passed by one day after another. Everyone discovered more and more clues. I've discovered that the energy density of the river is increasing, the Celestial Arch said. I've discovered that the changes in the images are related to the distribution of the 4 seasons, the Great Empress said. And Lin, burp. Another day passed by. I've discovered that the connection between the river of time is becoming more intense. Combined with the increase in energy density, I have reason to believe that we're getting closer and closer to the center of the world, Meng Ji analyzed. I've discovered a pattern in which the entrance to the world in the images is changing, Chun Chun said. And Lin, burp. Another day passed by. The frequency of humans appearing in the world in the river images is increasing, Shangwan analyzed. Not only that, but the level of the cultivation civilization seems to be improving as well, the great empress said. As expected, there is a pattern in the world of the river images. We'll most likely only have one chance, so we have to keep a close eye on it. If we miss this opportunity, we don't know when we'll get another one. The celestial arch was also getting a little nervous. Lin, burp, everyone was feeling like time was running out. Meanwhile, Lin was engulfing the power of time day after day. On the 28th day of engulfing the power of time, the system chimed again. Ding dong. Host power of time has been fully replenished. Now, synthesizing time techniques. Chapter 1460. Congratulations, host. You have completed the time stop technique. Upon using time stop, host will be able to stop the relative time within a radius of over a kilometer. Relative time. The concept of time is based on the target. After the time stop technique ends, the area that has been stopped will reconnect with the absolute time of the great Tao of heaven and earth. Note, if the target is far more powerful than the host, or has attained a greater understanding of the Tao of time than the host, they will be resistant to the time stop technique. Currently, the host can only stop time for 1 second. You can only be a real man for 1 second? That's way too short. And Lin faltered momentarily before grumbling. His voice had only just fallen when extremely terrifying spell techniques and true intent began to flow into his mind. This was the first time Lin had obtained such a profound time spell technique, and the enormous amount of information almost burst through his mind. It was no less terrifying than the Heavenly Tao series of techniques. After a long while, he finally mastered the time stop technique. It was also at this moment that he discovered just how powerful this technique was. What would he do in 1 second? He could do a lot of things in 1 second. He could swing his sword hundreds or even thousands of times. In a battle between powerful beings, victory or defeat could often be decided in an instant. Time stop was very similar to spatial seal in that both techniques could stop one's opponent on the spot. However, the difference was that even though the opponent's body would be restricted, they would still be able to think and use their power to resist. Those with powerful spatial powers could even instantly break through the spatial seal. The terrifying thing about time stop was that it could stop everything aside from the host, including the enemy's thoughts. It was as if that period of time didn't even exist for the enemy, let alone find a way to resist. It was undoubtedly the case that time stop had become Lin's most powerful trump card aside from his heavenly god powers. Another 2 days passed. The 30-day time limit was up. The heavenly time god's residual power of time finally dissipated. Lin was a little disappointed. If only he had been the one to kill the heavenly time god instead of self-detonating. If he could obtain the power of the heavenly god of time, who knew how bad *SS he would become. No, it seemed like he couldn't defeat Chun no matter how bad *SS he was. And Lin, bam, bam, bam. Ripples erupted from the Golden River. Chun, the Celestial Arch, and the others returned to the shore at the appointed time. I can already use a special method to infuse my power into images and sense the auras of different worlds. If I encounter images that belong to the Tai Chu continent, I feel like I'll be able to identify them immediately. The Celestial Arch said with excitement. Hearing this, everyone was overjoyed. After analyzing the characteristics of countless worlds in the Tai Chu continent, I can roughly deduce that the world of the Tai Chu continent will appear in about 50 days, Chun continued. Through analyzing the characteristics of countless worlds, such as the evolution of energy, the transition of civilizations, the culture, and the patterns of heaven and earth, I can roughly deduce that the world of the Tai Chu continent will appear in about 50 days. This sentence made everyone even more excited. This meant that they had a chance to escape in 50 days. I've also discovered something. The river is flowing faster and faster. If the Tai Chu continent is going to appear in 50 days, then it's very likely that we'll have less than a second to enter the image, and Lin analyzed. The air suddenly fell silent. Chun, the great empress, and the others all stared at him in astonishment. Why are you looking at me like that? And Lin felt a little pain in his liver. You're analyzing the river of time now. Meng Ji was in disbelief. You're not burping anymore? The celestial arch was perplexed. Are you hungry? Shangguan Yi asked with a concerned and gentle expression. And Lin, what kind of person do you think I am? Do you think I'm the type of person who only cares about eating every day? And Lin's expression darkened with indignation. Everyone fell silent, but they could tell from Lin's expression that he wanted to say, You're not. You've been burping for an entire month, and now you're suddenly not burping anymore. I'm really not used to it. A faint smile appeared on Shangguan Yi's face. Lin clasped a hand over his chest. What a heart-wrenching sight. He paused for a moment before replying with a serious expression. All right, I won't absorb any more energy for all of you. From this day forth, I'll dedicate my youth to returning to the Tai Chu continent. Great. We finally gained a new ally. The celestial arch clapped his hands. Everyone else applauded enthusiastically upon seeing this. And Lin felt as if he had been stabbed by a sword. Another capable member of the team? So they didn't treat him as a teammate? He had actually been absorbing the power of time with all his might in order to awaken his time spell technique as soon as possible. And he wanted to see if his new spell technique would be of any use here. After all, this was a space that was related to the power of time. He was doing this for his teammates. And Lin heaved a forlorn sigh. He wasn't trying to make his teammates understand his intentions. All he wanted was to do his best. Thus, the celestial arch, Chun Chun, and Lin, Meng Ji, the great empress, and Shangguan, he entered the river of time again to search for patterns and clues. Time continued to pass by. Everyone was getting more and more prepared. Due to the exceptional cultivation environment, everyone's cultivation bases had also progressed significantly. In particular, Shangguan Yi had attained phenomenal success in her Ice Matriarch Soul Aura, thereby allowing her to successfully summon the power of the Ice Matriarch. In other words, she was already a mighty figure at the return to Void Pinnacle stage. With a portion of the power of the Ice Matriarch, she could even hold her own against the Tao Integration Stage super mighty figure. From this day forth, all Snow Maidens would automatically submit to Shangguan Yi upon seeing her, including the Great Empress and Meng Ji. This was actually quite a joyous development for them. Shangguan Yi was able to make a breakthrough here and summon the power of the Ice Matriarch that she had left on the Tai Chu continent. This proved that this alternate space was connected to the Tai Chu continent. They could use this world to escape from this space. If it weren't for the fact that they didn't know when the Tai Chu continent would appear again, they would want to stay here and cultivate for a while longer. This was hundreds of times the rate of cultivation. This was heaven. Soon, the day that Chun Chen's projection of the Tai Chu continent appeared finally arrived. All 6 of them stood above the river and stared intently at the images flashing past their eyes. Everyone was extremely nervous as they only had a split second of opportunity. Soon, everyone was greeted by a peculiar image. Darkness took up almost the entire image, and countless humans in white Taoist robes were howling with anguish within the black mist. They were in extreme pain, and they seemed to have gone insane as they tore open their own bodies bit by bit with their bare hands. These are the uniforms of our Celestial Court Enforcement Team. The Celestial Thearcha's expression became extremely dark upon seeing this, as if he were a volcano that was about to erupt at any moment. At this moment, a white dot landed on a certain spot in the image. This was a spot that Chun Chun had set up for everyone to forcefully open up the passageway between the worlds. Boom, 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 in an instant. The second in command of the heaven-crushing sect, the High Priestess, the Great Empress, the Ice Matriarch, and Lin unleashed their most powerful attacks at the same time. Terrifying spell techniques that could destroy heaven and earth. Even an entire continent would be instantly pulverized by this kind of power. Kacha, a spatial rift began to appear on the image, from which a faint spatial power emanated. Go! Chun Chun suddenly roared. All 6 of them flew into the spatial rift at the same time. Chapter 1461. And Lin and the others fell headfirst into the fissure. An extremely powerful spatial power enshrouded their bodies. and at the same time, it was imbued with explosive power that seemed to be repelling them. This power was extremely violent, as if it were trying to tear their bodies to shreds. Everyone immediately unleashed defensive techniques to protect themselves. Thankfully, even the weakest among them was at the return to void pinnacle stage, so they were able to resist the backlash from this spatial power. Countless amounts of energy flashed behind them. They were actually traveling through the fissure at an extremely fast speed, and they were traveling faster and faster, to the point where even their bodies were beginning to twist and contort. Whoosh! And Lin was struck by a rush of dizziness. In the next instant, the sound of something shattering erupted. He even plummeted to the ground. Bam! Ow! And Lin was clearly lying on the ground, but another person had crashed into him from behind. It was warm, and there were 2 lumps of softness on his back. I'm sorry. Shangwani crawled up from Lin's back with an apologetic expression. Bam, bam, bam. There were a few more sounds of things crashing down. Everyone fell to the ground. Both the Great Empress and the Celestial Arch had created craters in the ground. Thankfully, there were no onlookers. Otherwise, it would be extremely embarrassing for them to return to this place. Where's this place? And Lin looked around to discover that this was an inky black secret chamber. The Celestial Arch slowly made his way toward a circular spell formation before picking up a few blood-stained and tattered pieces of clothing from the ground with a thunderous expression. Everyone was reminded of the cultivators who had been tortured to the point where they wished they were dead. They were in so much pain that they went insane. They tore apart their own flesh and blood without even realizing it. And this was just the beginning. Now, even their bones had disappeared, and only some clothes were left. One could imagine how horrifying the torture they were going to face in the future. These are all uniforms of the Celestial Court Enforcement Team, the Celestial Arch said in a low voice. And Lin's expression also darkened upon hearing this. He had a certain level of attachment to the Celestial Court Enforcement Team, and it could be said that they were colleagues. He was extremely enraged at the sight of what had happened to them. The Celestial Arch released his divine sense to scan the surroundings, but he didn't find any other clues, so he said, "Let's go out and have a look." He opened the door to the secret room and found a spiral staircase leading up. Boom! The door was sent flying by Lin's true chi. Heaven and earth finally appeared before everyone's eyes. They discovered that their previous location was actually the basement of an altar. It was now nighttime. The stars shone brightly, and the 2 moons hung high in the sky. In the middle of a circular altar, there was a strange beast skull. The skull was like that of a dragon or a phoenix. Its face was ferocious and ruthless, and there was a row of densely packed bloody teeth in its mouth. It was still emitting an extremely dense aura of death. Green flames flickered around the skull, making it look rather strange. This is the skull of a mighty figure at the return to void pinnacle stage of the sinister spirit beast cesspool. Could it be that we're in the sinister spirit beast cesspool right now? The Great Empress' eyes narrowed slightly. No, the position of the star is wrong. Where I am. Chinchin was confused. Billions of stars appeared in the celestial Thearcha's eyes. It's the kingdom of the 9 states. Everyone's expressions turned cold when they heard this. The sinister spirit beast cesspool had massacred the enforcement team of the Celestial Court in the Kingdom of the 9 States, and they had even set up a sacrificial altar. This was completely unheard of. Did those beasts have a death wish? Weren't they afraid that the emperors of the Celestial Court would slaughter all of them? The Celestial Arch suddenly turned toward a certain direction. There's a peculiar divine light in the southeast direction, as well as an extremely unfamiliar energy fluctuation. It doesn't seem to be from any tribe that I know of. The Great Empress also turned toward that direction with a reminiscent expression on her face. That's the strategic location of the Wind Plain State, the Falling Dragon Abyss. The Snow Maidens also fought their way to that place during their most powerful era, only to be crushed by the emperors of the Celestial Court. Chunshin pulled out a disc with divine symbols inscribed all over it with a grave expression. Heaven and earth have changed, and this is an extremely drastic change. For safety's sake, let's conceal ourselves and not reveal ourselves. We'll reveal ourselves once we've ascertained the situation. Everyone nodded upon hearing this, and Lin was still a little perplexed. It had only been 100 days, and the beast tribes of the sinister spirit beast cesspool had already become this arrogant. Just what had happened during the 100 days that he had been away, in the wind-plain state of the kingdom of the 9 states, within the falling dragon abyss. The mountain range stretched as far as the eye could see as the eyes of a boundless dragon. At the center of the dragon's body, the green lake water was like a dazzling dragon pearl. A massive palace over 10,000 feet tall, exuding a holy white divine light, sat beside the green lake water, emanating a divine light that illuminated a radius of over 100 kilometers. In front of the massive palace, there were over 10,000 buildings of different sizes, all of which formed an extremely grand and spectacular cluster of buildings. If a passerby were to see this, they would think that this was a first-rate, immortal holy land inhabited by many mysterious immortals. And Lin, Chun, and the others appeared not far away from the cluster of palaces and surveyed their surroundings. In contrast to the intricate and majestic palaces, there were many ferocious-looking beasts inside. There were minotaurs, horse-headed people, pig-headed people, snake-headed people, lion-headed people. They were most likely extremely massive mutant beasts in the past, but now they had all transformed into beastmen and were moving about in humanoid forms. There were close to 100,000 beasts here, and they were all extremely powerful. There are thousands of spirit beasts, dozens of soul formation stage soul beasts, and even 2 immortal beasts. However, what attracted the attention of Lin and the others were not the beastmen. Instead, it was the living beings that the beastmen had to bow respectfully to upon encountering them. They had white hair, white skin, and golden eyes. Regardless of whether it was in terms of body shape or appearance, they were quite similar to humans. These living beings wore white robes, and each and every one of their movements was elegant and graceful, as if they were natural-born nobles with a holy and regal aura. They looked at the beastmen with no disdain in their eyes, but it was as if they were looking at beings of a lower level. There was only benevolence and majesty in their eyes. There were only a few thousand of these peculiar living beings, and all of them exuded extremely unfamiliar energy fluctuations. What kind of living beings are these? And Lin's eyes narrowed as he asked in a low voice. He had never seen such a race in the Tai Chu Continent Encyclopedia of Species. The Celestial Arch, who had lived on the Tai Chu Continent for countless years, was also perplexed. I'm not sure either. They don't seem to be living beings from the Tai Chu Continent. Right at this moment, a massive white eagle with a wingspan of over 10,000 feet descended from the sky with a golden cage on its back. Master Celestia, I've captured 200 humans from the Kingdom of the 9 States United Army. The white eagle landed in front of an extremely massive palace before bowing its head in an extremely respectful manner. And Lin looked into the golden cage to find 200 cultivators from the Celestial Court Enforcement Department. Chapter 1462. And Lin was just about to spring into action to save the 200 members of the Celestial Court Executive Department. However, the Celestial Thearcha's hand suddenly pressed down on his shoulder. Don't interfere with this world for now. The Celestial Arch spoke in an indifferent voice. And Lin was a little perplexed, but the Celestial Arch had already spoken, so he could only give up. He knew that the Celestial Arch of the Celestial Court wouldn't let them suffer. The gate of the palace slowly opened up in front of the White Falcon. A living being in a white robe slowly strode out on bare feet. Behind him, there were dozens of solemn-looking creatures following behind him. A rare smile appeared on the man's face as he looked at the cultivators on the White Falcon. Foolish and despicable tribe. How long can you struggle for? The cultivators in the golden cage glared at the man before them with rage. Tui. Trash. Get the F***CK out of the Tai Chu continent. If you want to kill me, then do it. I'm not a man if I say another word. The man wasn't enraged by the enraged words of the cultivators in the cage. Instead, A smile appeared on his face. You're still useful, so I won't let you die so easily. Wouldn't it be more fun to kill you in front of everyone on the battlefield against the kingdom of the 9 States United Army? His voice was calm and indifferent, as if he were talking about something very common. The 200 cultivators in the cage were enraged beyond belief. Do you really think you can shake our morale like this? Our brethren from the kingdom of the 9 states will avenge us sooner or later, and you'll have to come to hell to see us then. I've already dragged down a few hundred heavenly human tribe cultivators with me, so I've earned quite a bit. Some cultivators spoke with a fearless expression, as if they were facing death with equanimity in the face. And Lin's heart jolted upon hearing the name Lou DeBeo. He turned toward one of the cultivators on the golden cage to discover a familiar, portly figure and a vicious expression. Wasn't this the F** King, Lou DeBeo he knew? But why was this Lou DeBeo here? And his cultivation base had already reached the spirit-nurturing pinnacle stage. And Lin's heart jolted. When Lou DeBeo graduated, he hadn't even reached the 10th stage Dao body, right? Only half a year had passed, and she was already at the spirit-nurturing pinnacle stage? Did this kid secretly cheat? He was even fiercer than Long Aoan. When the man outside the cage heard Lou DeBeo's words, his expression finally sank. He flicked his finger at Lou DeBeo, and a white light containing a sharp power instantly pierced through Lou DeBeo's stomach, causing blood to fly everywhere. Lou DeBeo let loose a muffled groan, but a disdainful smile appeared on his face. You're a soul-piercing stage, heavenly human tribe general, yet you're attacking a mortal like me, whose power has been sealed? If you have the guts, break the seal, and let's fight again. And Lin's expression shifted again as he observed from afar. It hadn't even been a year since Lou DeBeo had become so courageous. The heavenly human tribe that Lou DeBeo was referring to must be the living beings that resembled humans. As for the soul-piercing stage that Lou DeBeo was referring to, it was a little similar to the soul formation stage. However, Enlin could sense that this heavenly human tribe cultivator's aura was comparable to that of a return to void stage mighty figure. He's just trash. I don't think there's a need to give trash a chance to fight. The man spoke in a cold voice before making his way toward the palace. At the same time, he issued a command: cripple their cultivation bases and throw them into the ghostly insect cave. Plant the insects on their bodies first. Yes, General Shi-Fa. A dozen or so heavenly human tribe powerful beings with snowy white skin and silver spears in their hands knelt on the ground. They then began to make their way toward the cultivators in the cages as white formations lit up in their hands. Many of the beastmen, powerful beings, had already emerged from the other buildings, and they looked on with cold smiles at the cultivators who were about to have their cultivation bases crippled. Some of them even whistled. It had already become a standard procedure for these cultivators to have their cultivation bases crippled before being planted with poisonous insects. As such, they could be placed at the forefront of the battle against the Human Tribe United Army, where they could detonate the poisonous insects to devour their bodies. This would serve as a very effective deterrent. Over 1,000 heavenly human tribe powerful beings emerged from the palace and looked on with indifferent expressions, as if they were gods who had come to punish the sinners of this world. And Lin was just about to step in to save them, but it would be too late if he didn't step in now. However, he suddenly sensed something, and he turned toward a certain direction. A streak of blue light suddenly flashed past the buildings. A series of blood-curdling cries suddenly erupted. The streak of blue light seemed to have traveled tens of thousands of meters in the blink of an eye, and it was so fast that it was completely undetectable to the naked eye. Thousands of beastmen's eyes widened as their bodies were slowly sliced in half. Over 100 heavenly human tribe powerful beings didn't even have a chance to react before their bodies were sliced in half, from which white blood gushed forth. Who's there? General Shi-Fa's expression finally shifted. All of the beastmen and heavenly human tribe powerful beings emerged from the buildings upon seeing this. At this moment in the starry night sky, pristine white moonlight suddenly fell from the sky shining upon a mountain not far away from the palace complex. A lithe and graceful woman in a light blue palatial dress was sitting on a rock beside a cliff on the mountain, swinging her jade-like feet in a lazy manner, as if she didn't take the tens of thousands of soldiers before her seriously at all. Her black hair cascaded down like a waterfall, and her eyebrows were like wisps of smoke. Her skin was as translucent as white jade under the moonlight, and her dreamy blue eyes were mesmerizing. If there was someone more beautiful and dazzling than the moon in the sky, then it had to be the woman on the cliff. She was like a celestial maiden under the moonlight, and her beauty lit up the entire night sky. She was so beautiful that her beauty seemed to transcend all races. Even the tens of thousands of beastmen were mesmerized by her beauty. Even the high and mighty heavenly human tribe, who viewed themselves as superior and indifferent to the common people, found it difficult to tear their eyes away. Everyone fell silent, as if everyone had been mesmerized by her beauty. However, this peculiar silence was soon broken by screams of horror. "It's setting moon, celestial, immortal. Hurry up and defend," a cowardly rat-headed man screamed. His cry brought all of the beastmen back to their senses. However, it was also at this moment that the woman on the mountain waved a hand toward General Shi-Fa. All of a sudden, all of the beastmen felt as if a moon had appeared in the night sky. It was a blue moon, looking like a full moon, but also like a crescent moon with its head and tail connected. Whoosh ripples appeared in the air. For some reason, the moon had already appeared before General Shi-Fa. General Shi-Fa's expression shifted drastically, and an extremely dazzling golden light erupted from his fists as if they were two miniature suns as he roared toward the crescent moon. Whoosh! The moon that contained extreme sharpness collided with General Shi-Fa's fists. There was no terrifying energy shockwave because the moon cut through Shi-Fa's fists and body like butter. There was no obstruction at all. Not only that, but all of the heavenly human tribe powerful beings around him were also sliced in half at the same time. Boom! The gargantuan palace behind him also collapsed violently. This, countless beastmen looked as if they had seen a ghost, and before they had a chance to come to their senses, a tearing sensation spread through their entire bodies. So they had also been hit. Blood-curdling cries reverberated throughout the palace. Thousands of beastmen and hundreds of heavenly human tribe powerful beings had been slain in the blink of an eye by celestial immortal Shiyu. And Lin's mouth gaped open upon seeing this, and his mind went completely blank. This was all because of celestial immortal Shiyu. Wasn't she just Su Qianyan? Chapter 1463. And Lin's entire body was in disarray upon seeing this. He really wanted to jump out, grab Su Qianyan, and interrogate her for an explanation. Who the hell was Setting Moon, celestial immortal? How was she already at the return to void stage? And what kind of cheat was she using? She had only taken 100 days to progress from the soul formation initial stage to the return to void stage. How many God of War systems would it take for her to do that? Even though his heart was in turmoil, he knew that this was not the time to appear, so he repressed the urge to do so. At this moment, the blue moon had decapitated the enemy general as well as the cage that was imprisoning Liu Debao and the others. Only then did it return to the summit of the mountain before transforming into a halo of moonlight that danced around the woman. Setting Moon, celestial immortal's ethereal figure was able to decapitate thousands of beasts, over 100 heavenly humans, and a general with just a flick of her fingers. All of the remaining powerful beings were stunned into silence. She also stood up at this moment, and her gentle voice was tinged with a hint of coldness. The falling dragon abyss base of the Heavenly Human Tribe United Army will cease to exist after tonight. Even in the face of so many ferocious beasts and thousands of mysterious heavenly humans, there was no hint of fear on the woman's face. It was as if she were a high and mighty goddess who could decide the life and death of others with a single word. Boom, boom, boom. A series of astonishing pillars of white light rose into the sky from within the palaces. Terrifying power swept forth like a tsunami. There were even 12 auras that were even more powerful than General Shiefei's. You dare to invade our falling dragon abyss base. You're seeking death. He. This human sure is pretty. There are very few in our heavenly human tribe who can compare with her. Why don't we capture her alive and enjoy her before the entire human race is destroyed? That's a good idea. Let's capture her alive. Don't get complacent. She's one of the top killing gods of the human race. Setting moon, celestial immortal. A series of voices sounded from within the palaces as 12 figures with extremely powerful auras emerged from different palaces to form a combined attack formation. The grand formation conformed to the principles of the heavens and the earth, and it was peerlessly profound. It was capable of fusing the energy of 12 living beings together to the greatest extent and bring forth the limit of their strength. The celestial Thearch's expression had already become extremely grave. I can sense that there are 12 heavenly human tribe mighty figures at the pinnacle of the soul-piercing stage, and each of them is comparable to a return to void initial stage powerful being. The powers of the 12 return to void initial stage powerful beings have perfectly fused together, and in conjunction with this extremely high-level combination formation, they are able to unleash the power of a mighty figure at the return to void pinnacle stage. Setting moon, celestial immortal, is going to be a little troublesome. At this moment, something strange happened. Another crack appeared in the void of space. A handsome man in snow-white robes appeared in the sky. Behind them stood 100 cultivators dressed in golden robes. Each of them was a cultivator at the peak of the soul formation stage. Raise the cannons. His storage ring flashed, and 100 inky black cannons with peculiar metallic materials suddenly appeared in the clouds. A strange dark formation began to appear and revolved around the barrel of the cannon. Light quickly converged on the inky black cannon muzzles, and the light became more and more terrifying. Tens of thousands of beasts looked up at the 100 miniature suns that had suddenly appeared in the sky, and an extremely ominous feeling welled up in their hearts. As for Lou de Bayo and the others, they had already fled for their lives. At this moment, one of the beasts finally screamed. It's him. He's the 4-9 immortal sex, true, nuclear, celestial immortal. Everyone run. The title of true nuclear celestial immortal seemed to be even more terrifying than the title of setting moon, celestial immortal. All of the beasts fled into the distance in a panicked frenzy upon hearing this. The first man, who was as handsome as an immortal, raised his arm and shouted, "All disciples of the Linga, listen up. Fire the cannons." Boom, 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 boom. The boom of the cannons erupted into the heavens. The earth instantly tremored as destructive energy exploded on the ground. Scorching flames lit up the night sky even brighter than day. Terrifying cannon fire enshrouded almost the entire falling dragon abyss. Countless beasts and heavenly human tribe powerful beings didn't even get a chance to cry out before they were reduced to cannon fodder. Even some of the exquisitely crafted palaces were reduced to dust. Aside from the main palace that was over 10,000 feet tall, which was protected by spell formations, nothing else could escape the cannon fire. Even the rippling green lake was instantly vaporized by the cannon fire. This was why all of the beast tribe powerful beings were so fearful. True nuclear celestial immortal was leading the charge, and he was going to destroy everything in his path. He wasn't even going to give the small monsters a chance to enjoy the show. In fact, from a certain point of view, his arrival was a map cannon. He wanted to clear out all the small monsters. That's the Purple Star Civilization's macro atomic true essence cannon. A hint of shock appeared on Chun Chen's face. That technology should have been lost. Why is it in his hands? After a barrage of cannon fire, only 90% of the beast tribe powerful beings and heavenly human tribe powerful beings remained. However, the ones that remained were all extremely powerful living beings. Kill him. F***CK. Just 2 returned to void stage celestial immortals. Several dozen extremely disheveled powerful beings rose into the sky. Among them were 12 heavenly human tribe powerful beings at the pinnacle of the soul-piercing stage, as well as 2 immortal beasts from the beast tribe. True nuclear celestial immortals stepped forward. We've cleared out the trash. Now it's time for the useless trash. All of the powerful beings were enraged upon hearing this. They were about to be ganged up on, but the ones being ganged up on were looking down on them. Burn, useless trash. True nuclear celestial immortals stepped forward, and the projection of an yin-yang diagram suddenly appeared beneath his feet, encompassing an area with a radius of over 50 kilometers. Everything has a core. When the power within the core is completely unleashed, the power unleashed will be unimaginable. A hint of fanaticism appeared in the man's eyes as he looked at the oncoming mighty figures before stomping his foot down onto the formation. The particles in the air around the mighty figures were guided by a peculiar power, upon which extremely terrifying light suddenly erupted. Everything had happened far too abruptly. They didn't even have a chance to react. The particles in the air began to explode, unleashing all of the energy within them. Boom! An earth-shattering explosion. The white ball of light was like a destructive sun, annihilating all things. A ring-shaped shockwave proliferated forth, tearing apart the earth within a radius of over 100 kilometers and sending dust and debris flying into the air. The dragon-shaped mountain range that stretched for over 1,000 kilometers was snapped in half. The blood-curdling cries of countless powerful beings reverberated through the air. The thousands of living beings on the ground below all lay prone on the ground with expressions of despair as they unleashed protective spell techniques in a frenzy, hoping to be able to survive the shockwaves of the explosion. Chun Chen's expression shifted again. To be able to unleash the power of the microscopic world to such an extent, this immortal is not to be underestimated. And Lin's expression darkened upon seeing this. How is this not to be underestimated? This was a complete disaster. Give me back my big brother Chung. That's right, the true nuclear celestial immortal in the air was none other than Xian Yuan Chung. And Lin really couldn't understand why Big Brother Chung would choose such a moniker. Could it be that he was completely focused on the path of explosion? Was he worthy of being the son of the sect leader of the 10,000 Spirits Immortal Sect? Was he worthy of his ancestors? 10,000 mythological beasts stampeded over his heart. Several dozen powerful beings were killed by the terrifying explosion. Even 5 heavenly human tribe, mighty figures at the pinnacle of the soul-piercing pinnacle stage, had been blasted into nothingness. There were only 9 surviving experts. 7 heavenly human tribe generals at the pinnacle of the soul-piercing pinnacle stage, and 2 return to void stage immortal beasts pounced toward Xian Yuan Chung in a frenzy, even though they had been severely wounded. After unleashing such a powerful technique, his opponent was at his weakest, which was also the best time to attack. They were going to take his life in this short window of time. A crisp, bell-like voice suddenly sounded. Ripples surged through the air. A silvery white saber projection slashed through the air in a dazzling arc under the moonlight. A slender figure had already appeared behind one of the heavenly human tribe generals. His head fell to the ground, and white blood splattered through the air. Beauty and desolation, at this moment, naturally and harmoniously fused into one. And Lin's pupils contracted drastically upon seeing this figure, and his mouth gaped open in shock once again. Chapter 1464. This was a very unfamiliar woman. She wore a tight-fitting black Taoist robe, which accentuated her tall and slender figure. She had a pair of flawless features, and a pair of bright eyes glinted with a hint of sharpness. This woman's looks and disposition were both top-notch. She was like a dancing black swan under the moonlight, and she held a silvery white dagger in her hand as she flashed toward another general at the soul-piercing pinnacle stage in the blink of an eye. Everything had happened far too abruptly. However, the generals of the heavenly human tribe weren't to be trifled with. As soon as the situation changed, the combined attack formation began to operate, and the power of the remaining 6 generals fused into one. Die! The general that had been targeted by the woman roared as he materialized a light shield to defend himself against her attack. At the same time, a devastating light sword materialized in his other hand, which he slashed down upon the woman. In his current state, he could unleash power comparable to that of a return to void final stage mighty figure for a short time. However, the woman before him was only at the pinnacle of the return to void initial stage. The woman in black was not fearful in the slightest. Her lithe body swooped forward with unstoppable force as her silvery white dagger slashed through the night sky in a lethal arc. A cruel smile appeared on the general's face upon seeing this, and the light sword in his hand fell upon the woman at an even faster speed. His light shield was comparable to the power of the divine Tao of a return to void final stage mighty figure. There was no way that the woman's dagger would be able to break through it in a short time. The dagger arrived in the blink of an eye, striking the light shield that had been materialized by the 6 heavenly human tribe generals. A sharp screeching sound erupted. A series of crimson, veined patterns began to appear on the surface of the dagger, which resembled a series of blood vessels. At the same time, a dark divine light imbued with the power to engulf all things converged at the tip of the dagger. The heavenly human tribe general was shocked to discover that his light shield had been punctured by the dagger at an extremely fast speed, as if there was nothing that could stand in the way of the dagger's trajectory. How could this be? An expression of incredulity appeared on his face. Immediately afterward, the dagger closed in, plunging him into eternal darkness after a burst of excruciating pain. The dagger in the woman's hand instantly pierced through the general's head. Then, she turned around and pounced toward another heavenly human tribe general with a lithe and graceful body. Ah! Screams reverberated in the sky. The black-robed woman transformed into the phantom killing god. With an invincible aura, she shuttled through the air. Every time she attacked, it meant the death of a life. This scene caused all the living beings that were struggling at death's door to tremble in fear. An expert recognized the other party's identity and exclaimed, "It's her. She was missing in Celestial Immortal of the 4-9 Immortal sect. This is a true god of death." Missing in Celestial Immortal? And Lin, who was hiding in the dark and observing the black-clothed woman's performance, felt his heart tremble. He muttered this name in a low voice. A reminiscent expression also appeared on the Celestial Thearcha's face. The dagger in her hand is a divine tool? Why were these energy fluctuations so familiar? I remember that Zwei accepted your request and specially forged an assassination divine artifact. The energy waves of this divine artifact are somewhat similar, and Lin didn't say anything. Instead, he stared at the black-clothed woman's unfamiliar, yet somewhat familiar features. The 7 heavenly human tribe generals didn't even get a chance to attack Xian Yuan Cheng before they were all slain by a woman in a black robe. This was an extremely terrifying scene. The 2 returned to Void Stage immortal beasts were shocked by this sudden turn of events, and their survival instincts welled up in their hearts as they fled into the distance without even looking back. They were only returned to Void Initial Stage immortal beasts. How were they supposed to deal with these gods of death? However, right at this moment, the blue moon descended. A dragon falcon immortal beast was sliced in half by the blue moon. The extremely ferocious, demonic hell, immortal tiger suddenly exploded in the air as it was fleeing. It was an immortal beast, but it was blasted to death by air. The true nuclear celestial immortal harumphed coldly. I'm the true nuclear celestial immortal who can detonate anything. Your fate was sealed the moment you chose to run away. And Lin, the true nuclear celestial immortal who could detonate anything? Are you serious, Big Brother Chung? Heaven and earth seemed to have fallen silent again. All of the powerful beings on the ground below didn't even dare to breathe too loudly. The setting moon celestial immortal, true nuclear celestial immortal, and missing in celestial immortal had truly turned the falling dragon abyss upside down. Of the 100,000 beasts, only a few hundred remained. Of the thousands of heavenly human tribe powerful beings, only a few dozen remained. How terrifying was this? Right at this moment, a massive spell formation suddenly appeared on the rubble of the falling dragon abyss. It quickly absorbed the energy of death on the battlefield. The corpses of the beast tribe powerful beings and the blood of the heavenly human tribe powerful beings were all fused into the spell formation. What is the heavenly palace trying to do? Some of the beast tribe powerful beings turned with shock and horror on their faces toward the only unscathed palace on the battlefield. Sacrifice! He's sacrificing our lives. One of the beasts screamed. At this moment, some of the wounded heavenly human tribe powerful beings bowed, respectfully, toward the pristine white palace. My lord is wise. Boom! The spell formation instantly sealed off the space within a radius of over 50 kilometers, creating an indestructible cage. The gate opened, and a silver-haired, golden-eyed man strode out. His face was completely expressionless, and there was a sense of nonchalance emanating from his body. His robe was no longer a white robe. Instead, it was a golden robe with countless divine symbols embroidered on it. A heavenly human tribe, great general. My God, there's a heavenly human tribe, great general, in our falling dragon abyss. We're saved. All of the golden-robed great generals are heaven pioneer stage powerful beings with combat prowess comparable to Tao integration initial stage mighty figures. No matter how powerful a return to void stage celestial immortal is, he's still only at the return to void stage. Furthermore, the three of them haven't even attained the power of the divine Tao yet. Some of the beast tribe powerful beings were already elated. The appearance of the great general was a pleasant surprise to them. Even though they were allies, none of them had discovered that there was a great general here. The heavenly human tribe, great general, looked up at the three people in the distance. Setting moon, celestial immortal, true nuclear celestial immortal, missing in celestial immortal. Are you all here? I had you kill so many of my subordinates just to lure you out. You're all core members of the 4-9 immortal sect. If I capture all of you and set up a trap for the 4-9 immortal sect, do you think I'll be able to destroy the 4-9 immortal sect in one fell swoop? All of the living beings present stirred upon hearing this. So this heavenly human tribe great general was waiting for an opportunity to capture the core members of the 4-9 immortal sect alive. On the ground below, the white formation had absorbed the blood of close to 100,000 living beings, and a terrifying might began to emanate from it before materializing into a massive white dragon over 10,000 feet in length. Roar! Just the white dragon's roar was enough to shatter the space within a radius of 5 kilometers. Its aura had even transcended beyond the return to void pinnacle stage and was close to the Tao integration stage. The great general stepped forward and instantly teleported to the head of the white dragon before charging toward true nuclear celestial immortal and the others. Chapter 1465. A white dragon constructed from a formation that possessed Tao integration stage power and a heavenly human tribe great general whose power rivaled that of a Tao integration initial stage heavenly human tribe great general. The combination of the two of them naturally posed an extremely powerful threat to return to void stage cultivators. True nuclear celestial immortal, setting moon celestial immortal, and missing in celestial immortal also wore grave expressions. They could still put up a fight against opponents at the return to void pinnacle stage. However, he was now facing a Tao integration stage, super mighty figure. The disparity between their cultivation bases was simply too vast. I am Great General Tian Lien. Remember my name. This will be your final battle. The great general flew toward true nuclear celestial immortal atop his white dragon with a calm expression. Boom, 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 boom. The 100 cannons in the night sky rumbled incessantly, and their targets were none other than Great General Tian Lien and the white dragon beneath his feet. The white dragon opened its huge mouth and spat out a strange white cloud. The energy of the cannons bombarded the white clouds, but it was like falling into cotton. The energy was greatly reduced, and in the end, it was completely swallowed by the white clouds. True nuclear celestial immortal's expression became grave upon seeing this. and a massive yin-yang formation appeared beneath his feet before quickly activating. The air kept vibrating, and the particles released an extremely dazzling light. Rumble. An earth-shattering explosion rang out. The terrifying energy engulfed White Dragon and Sky Lotus. This kind of explosion was powerful enough to completely obliterate a return to Void Stage mighty figure. Amidst the surging clouds and mist, the giant White Dragon let loose a roar as its massive body tore through the cannon blasts. And aside from some charred scales, it was completely unscathed as it pounced toward true nuclear celestial immortal at an even faster speed. At this moment, Setting Moon Celestial Immortal raised a hand from afar, and a blue crescent arc instantly appeared in front of Great General Tian Lien, slashing toward his neck with absolute slicing power. Great General Tian Lien remained expressionless as white light erupted from his hand, and he slapped it toward the oncoming crescent moon at an even faster speed. It was also at this moment that heaven and earth seemed to give him a boost of power in his hands. The celestial Thearcha's expression shifted again. What's going on? Why is it able to borrow power from the heavens? This power clearly carries a trace of law. Could it be that the Heaven Pioneer stage beings of the heavenly human tribe are all capable of communicating with the heavenly Tao? Chun Chen's expression also became a little grim. It could be said that the Celestial Arch was the only living being in the Kingdom of the Nine States who could borrow the power of the heavens, and this was only because of his unique physique and cultivation method. But now, a heavenly human tribe great general possessed this kind of power. Even though he didn't use the power of the heavens to a very high degree, it was still enough to astonish them. Bang! The blue crescent arc collided with Tian Lien's palm, but it was unable to break through his defense and was sent flying by the force. Tian Lien's expression remained unchanged as she flew toward true nuclear celestial immortal atop her white dragon. He gripped the air, and a spear made of white light appeared in his hand. At the same time, another wave of power descended from the sky and attached itself to the spear, making its power even more terrifying. Heaven Suppression Spear, Tian Lien said as she stabbed her spear toward true nuclear celestial immortal. In the blink of an eye, a black figure suddenly appeared out of thin air with a dagger in its hand, and it instantly appeared before Tian Lien, leaving only a series of afterimages in its wake. The divine weapon glowed with a sinister light and was imbued with absolute assassination intent as it slashed toward Tian Lien's neck in an attempt to slice his neck open. Tian Lien finally slowed down at this moment. One was charging forward while the other was hurtling backward, and the two of them were traveling at breakneck speeds. He was slowing down purely to give himself time to strike. At the same time, it was quite clear that he was wary of missing in Celestial Immortal's attack. Tian Lien reacted extremely quickly, and he quickly retreated at the sight of the silvery white blade, which only managed to slice off a few strands of his white hair. At the same time, he bent his arm that was holding the light spear and thrust it at Missing and Celestial Immortal, who was passing by. Missing and Celestial Immortal was unable to evade in time, and her waist was grazed by the spear, leaving behind an extremely deep gash. Missing and Celestial Immortal's attack had failed to land, and she hurtled back in retreat. However, countless golden divine symbols suddenly appeared around her wound, and a terrifying sealing force swept over her entire body. All those who were struck by my heaven-sealing spear will have their powers severely restricted, so your attempts to escape will be futile. Tian Lien looked at Missing and Celestial Immortal, and a scintillating light erupted from his spear as he prepared to completely seal his opponent. Boom! 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 All of a sudden, the air around him exploded once more. Run! True nuclear celestial immortal yelled. All of a sudden, a streak of white light tore through the explosion before piercing through space. It was as fast as lightning, and it instantly punctured true nuclear celestial immortal's chest. The terrifying sealing force caused his legs to give out from under him, and he fell to his knees. You're only trying to escape now? Isn't it a little too late? Tian Lien walked out from the flames with an indifferent expression. Setting Moon, celestial immortal, pursed her lips as she slowly retreated. Great General Tian Lien had forced the two celestial immortals into a state of feebleness at an extremely fast speed, so victory was already in his grasp. No matter how much he struggled, he wouldn't be able to change the outcome of this battle. All of the beast men in the ruins of the falling dragon abyss were already getting excited. Lu DeBeo and the others were trying to contact the others through voice transmission talismans. However, what they didn't expect was that the formation on the ground had already transformed into the most terrifying cage. Not only had it cut off all of the Celestial Immortals' escape routes, but it had also completely cut off all communication channels. And Lin finally stood up upon seeing this. It's time for me to show up. He had only just stood up when Chun Shun pressed him down again. And Lin, sit down. It's not your turn yet. And Lin. The Celestial Arch spoke in a low voice. Something is approaching. It's a very powerful aura. And Lin's heart jolted again. Just who was this being that the Celestial Arch was referring to as very powerful? A crisp cry erupted, as if it were the voice of the heavens. Under the starry night sky, it was as if a red sun had risen from the south. Light illuminated the entire realm. And Lin looked toward the south, and his mouth gaped open in shock. A red ocean was surging toward him from the horizon. No, that wasn't an ocean. That was a flame of extreme yang. It was at least of the divine flame level. Just by appearing, it had brought with it an entire ocean of divine flames. Normal Tao integration stage, super mighty figures wouldn't be able to do something like this, unless another crisp cry erupted from within the sea of flames. A gargantuan body leaped out from within the sea of flames. It was regal and gorgeous, with a pair of shimmering golden eyes, 5 colored feet, and a pair of wings that resembled flaming flower petals, all of which glowed with a dazzling divine light, as if it were the most perfect living being between heaven and earth. The sea of divine flames in the sky was like a red carpet for it to walk on. The red light that resembled the sun was its announcement of its arrival in this world. And Lin had never seen such a dazzling living being. All of the beast men and the members of the Celestial Court Executive Department were dumbstruck. What appeared in front of everyone was a fire phoenix. Chapter 1466. Phoenixes were one of the most regal tribes in the world. They were the favored children of the heavens. They were regal and elegant, and they were extremely powerful. They very rarely appeared in the world, and they were like gods that looked down upon all living beings from the heavens. Their beauty was enough to mesmerize all living beings. Regardless of whether they were humans, beasts, true demon tribe, stone tribe, or any other tribe, all of them would be captivated by their beauty. Even the heavenly human tribe great general was entranced by the sight of the phoenix. It really is the favored child of heaven and earth. Even the heavenly human tribe can't compare to its beauty. Tian Lien murmured to himself. Huh, no. His body suddenly shuddered. Why am I sighing now? The phoenix is here. I should be running. Tian Lien finally came to his senses. However, the phoenix spread its wings and reached the falling dragon abyss in the blink of an eye before crashing into his spell formation with devastating divine might. Boom! An earth-shattering collision ensued. Tian Lien had sacrificed close to 100,000 beasts and heavenly human tribe cultivators to set up a spell formation, but it was completely pulverized by the phoenix. The phoenix spread its wings, and a sea of divine flames enshrouded the entire falling dragon abyss. The trapping spell formation was activated again. However, the roles were reversed this time. Great General Tian Lien of the heavenly human tribe was the one being trapped. All of the beasts on the ground below almost knelt to the ground. Red divine flames spread through the heavens. What terrifying power! In the entire Tai Chu continent, the only phoenix with such a pure and powerful flame power is most likely the one from the 4-9 Immortal sect, right? That's right. It's that little Huang phoenix. Do you want to F Asterisk King die? How dare you refer to the phoenix by its name? I'm going to die anyway, So what's wrong with me calling out its name? Some of the beasts retorted. If the phoenix is here, then doesn't that mean that person is also here? All of the beasts' faces had turned deathly pale as they spoke. On the phoenix's back, a jade dress was particularly eye-catching amid the sea of divine flames. Her skin was as smooth as white jade, and her eyes shone with divine light. Holy flames revolved around her slender body, revealing her bare hands and a golden bracelet around her wrist. She looked around casually, and she appeared in this world. That woman, at first glance, did not seem to belong to the mortal world. She was like a goddess who had fallen from the 9 heavens. No, even in the 9 heavens, she would definitely be a goddess who could stun all the gods. Such an extraordinary woman, standing on the noble phoenix, was harmonious and natural, as if this was how it should be. That's right, only a woman like this is worthy of such a phoenix. And Lin stared at that otherworldly and elegant woman, unable to shift his eyes away. Just like that, he stared at her in a daze. It was as if countless years had passed, and she had finally appeared before his eyes again. The woman's entrance was simply too gorgeous. Her style was peerless, and the phoenix beneath her was even more arrogant. In contrast, the white dragon beneath Great General Tian Lian's feet suddenly appeared a little comical in comparison, as if it were a white loach that was swimming around. Divine Phoenix Maiden, why are you here? Marshal Tian Lian said this name through gritted teeth. That's impossible. Marshal Qiu Chen has been keeping an eye on your movements. Marshal Qiu Chen? Are you talking about him? The woman spoke in a cold voice. Her storage ring flashed, and a head with a pale face appeared before waving at Great General Tian Lian. Great General Tian Lian, that's all right. You'll be able to accompany him soon. From this day forth, the falling dragon abyss stronghold will cease to exist. Su Xiaolan spoke in a cold voice. True nuclear celestial immortal, setting moon celestial immortal, and missing in celestial immortal's tense expressions finally eased upon seeing the divine Phoenix Maiden. It was as if the arrival of this divine Phoenix Maiden had stabilized everything. Don't look down on heavenly beings. Great General Tian Lian couldn't stand being looked down upon by despicable humans. He let loose an enraged roar as black vein patterns began to appear on his snowy white skin. Power immediately descended from the sky, and his aura swelled drastically once again. Tian Lian stood atop the roaring white dragon before pouncing toward the phoenix with extremely fearsome power. Heavenly wrath, sealing palm. Countless divine symbols converged on Great General Tian Lian's palm as he unleashed the most powerful attack of his life. He struck out with his palm, and the golden palm energy expanded with the wind, growing larger and larger until it was 100 miles wide. A lotus flower appeared at the center of his palm, containing a terrifying sealing power. A lotus appeared in the palm, and the lotus suppressed the heavens. The power of the heavens was imbued into the palm projection, making it even more fearsome. The dragon-shaped mountain range, over 1,000 kilometers in length, was unable to withstand the might of this palm and collapsed. And Lin's heart jolted with shock. This attack was most likely comparable to a full-force attack from Emperor Yideng. The gargantuan palm seemed to be trying to grip the phoenix in the sky tightly in its grasp. The phoenix gently flapped its wings toward the gargantuan golden palm, and boundless divine flames swept forth like a tsunami wave before crashing directly toward the gargantuan golden palm. Boom! The divine flames clashed violently with the gargantuan palm. Terrifying waves of flames surged through the entire sky, transforming the starry night sky into a sea of scorching divine flames. It was as if doomsday had descended upon this world. Veins bulged on Great General Tian Lian's forehead, and he injected all of the power within his body into his palm. However, the divine flames of the phoenix were unstoppable as they crashed relentlessly into the gargantuan golden palm. The gargantuan palm became slower and slower, and in the end, a series of extremely thick cracks began to appear on its surface. In the end, The divine flames knocked the heavenly wrath sealing palm aside before sweeping toward the white dragon in a frenzy. The white dragon blasted a strange white mist toward the divine flames in an attempt to absorb the power of the flames. However, the divine flames seemed to be boundless, and no matter how much white mist the white dragon blasted out, the divine flames were unable to absorb all of it. The white dragon's face had turned green, and it was on the brink of death from lack of oxygen. Thus, the white dragon let loose a wail of anguish before being melted by the divine flames. The phoenix had used the simplest, most direct, and most brutal method to crush all of Great General Tian Lien's power, striking him with an unprecedented sense of powerlessness and despair. Great General Tian Lien stumbled back frantically in the face of the divine flames. His dazzling golden robe was in tatters, and there were many burns all over his body. At this moment, he understood that he couldn't defeat the human expert in front of him. It's time to raise the danger level of the divine phoenix maiden and the phoenix. Great General Tian Lien murmured to himself with a dark expression as he fled into the distance. However, a woman in a jade dress suddenly appeared in front of him. Her white holy flame wings were extremely dazzling under the moonlight, and her dress fluttered in the wind, giving her the appearance of an azure lotus blossoming in the night sky. Great General Tian Lien's pupils contracted, and before he had a chance to react, he saw the dragon's sparrow sword fly out of its scabbard, which transformed into a bolt of lightning. Ding! The crisp ringing of the sword erupted. In the next instant, the woman in a jade dress had already appeared behind him before slowly sheathing her sword. Air! Great General Tian Lien's mouth gaped open as a gash appeared on his head. His body was torn apart, and blood gushed forth. This was the final scene of his life. A heaven pioneer stage, heavenly human tribe, Great General had been insta-killed by the divine Phoenix Maiden. The divine Phoenix Maiden had shocked the heavens, and the heavenly ice dragon had fallen from the heavens. Chapter 1467. The heavenly human tribe Great General had been slain by the divine Phoenix Maiden, and all of the beast tribe powerful beings and heavenly human tribe powerful beings on the ground below felt as if they had lost all of their energy. How could this be? How could a heaven pioneer stage, heavenly human tribe powerful being be slain so easily? The lion man's body trembled uncontrollably with incredulity on his face. Great General Tian Lien was chosen by the heavens. How could he have been slain by a single sword strike? Why are you still standing here? Run! A trembling rat man couldn't help but turn back into a rat man and flee into the distance. A wry smile appeared on the snake man's face at the sight of the divine phoenix flames engulfing the entire falling dragon abyss. Run? Where can we run to? F***CK. Let's fight it out with her. Even if we die, we're going to take a chunk of her flesh. A lightning tiger roared before pouncing toward the divine Phoenix Maiden. All of the other beast tribe powerful beings knew that there was no hope of escape, so they also chose to fight to the death. The heavenly human tribe powerful beings summoned pillars of white energy to hurtle directly toward the phoenix in the sky. Trash! The divine Phoenix Maiden stood atop the phoenix and waved a hand through the air. Rain of the Phoenix, cleanse everything. The phoenix in the sky shook its body, as if it were shaking off the water droplets on its body, upon which boundless divine flames rained down like arrows. The arrows pierced through the bodies of the beast tribe powerful beings, tore through the pillars of energy, and melted the bodies of the heavenly human tribe powerful beings. After a short period of blood-curdling cries, there were no longer any living enemies in the falling dragon abyss. All of this had happened because of a single tremble from the phoenix. Holy F***CK. That phoenix is way too badass. And Lin was extremely envious as he looked on from his hiding spot. This was the dream steed that a cultivator should have. Just what had Xiaolan experienced during the time he was gone. That's right. The cultivator who was riding a phoenix as her steed was none other than Su Xiaolan, whom he hadn't seen for 100 days. Of course, he didn't dare to say that they had only been apart for 100 days. If it was just one person who had undergone a massive transformation, then it could still be explained as a freak. However, Lin refused to believe that anyone could have undergone such drastic transformations in just 100 days. We're in serious trouble now, Shang Wanning murmured. She was acquainted with Su Xiaolan. Just a few years ago, she was still at the spirit nurturing stage, but now she had suddenly progressed to the Dao integration stage. She suddenly felt like this world was a fantasy. Either there's a problem with this world, or there's a problem with them. The celestial Dharch also drew a sharp intake of breath as a look of horror appeared on his face. I've already analyzed and sensed this world. This is indeed the world that we once lived in. However, the changes happened very quickly. It doesn't seem like 100 days have passed, Chun said. And Lin couldn't help but run out to find out what was going on. However, in order to avoid interfering with this world prematurely, he resisted the urge. The divine flames of the falling dragon abyss began to dissipate. This piece of land had already been turned into ruins. Close to 100,000 powerful beings had all died. This was a massive event on the Tai Chu continent. Are you guys okay? The divine phoenix maiden leaped down from the vermilion bird before making her way over to true nuclear celestial immortal, who was the most severely wounded. I'm fine. True nuclear celestial immortal smiled before swallowing a spirit pill. Xiaolan, celestial immortal sunset moon, sat on a crescent moon and flew over with a faint smile on her face as she gently hooked her arm around the green-robed woman's arm. Celestial immortal sunset moon flew over with a faint smile on her face. I encountered a small mishap. The divine phoenix maiden wore an apologetic expression. Great General Chen wasn't the only one keeping an eye on me. There were two other great generals as well. They joined forces to stop me, and it took me some time to defeat them. I killed one of them and chased the other two away before I got here. All of the celestial immortals drew another sharp intake of breath. 3 heavenly human tribe great generals had attacked Xiaolan at the same time, but they had still been crushed to this extent. This wasn't a small mishap. This was a massive mishap. Master's wife really is the best. Missing in celestial immortal made her way over to the divine phoenix maiden with a pure smile on her face before holding onto her little hand. Our mission was a success. Let's go back. In stark contrast to her previous beauty, she was as adorable and sweet as a girl next door as she held onto the divine phoenix maiden's hand with a reluctant expression. The divine phoenix maiden tapped missing in celestial immortal's nose with a smile. Little Ling, you go back with classmates Xin Yuan and Su Qiu. I still have something to do. And Lin's heart jolted upon hearing this. As expected, the divine phoenix maiden was Su Xiaolan. True nuclear celestial immortal was Xin Yuan Cheng, and setting moon celestial immortal was Su Qianyan. This was the official confirmation. As for missing in celestial immortal, Xiaolan referred to her as Little Ling, so she referred to her as Master's wife. Could it be that she was Yi Ling? And Lin thought back to that adorable and obedient little girl who followed him everywhere he went, and he almost threw up a mouthful of blood as he looked at the god of slaughter, who was now killing return to void stage mighty figures like slaughtering chickens. There had to be something wrong. F***CK, his 4th stage Dao body disciple, was at the pinnacle of the return to void initial stage after 100 days. What a joke. And Lin had been dealt a heavy blow. He had thought that he would be able to find some dignity as a master. At the very least, he would be able to have a little girl as his disciple. But now, the little girl's cultivation base had also surpassed his. Xiao Zhe, Xiao Tu, and Yi Ling had all reached a higher cultivation base than him. He felt like a fake master. However, as her master, he was quite pleased that she kept referring to him as Master's wife. Do something? Master's wife? What are you going to do? Could it be? Yi Ling suddenly became a little panicked, and she gripped tightly onto Su Xiaolan's sleeve. It's all right. I'm going to the opposite shore realm, and we'll be back soon. Su Xiaolan offered words of consolation with a smile. No. Xin Yuan Cheng's expression was extremely grave. Things are different now. I wouldn't tell you even if you went there every day in the past. But now, there are countless terrifying, powerful beings watching you. If you're not careful, you could very well be doomed. I've made up my mind. Don't worry, with my cultivation base, there aren't many people on the entire Chu continent that could stop me from escaping. Don't come with me, or I'll expose myself. I'll just go by myself, Su Xiaolan insisted. Xiaolan. Su Qinyan turned to Su Xiaolan with a concerned expression. Sai, why do you have to do this? Xinyuan Cheng shook his head and didn't say anything else. It's very necessary. Su Xiaolan looked toward the northwest with a gentle smile on her face. I'm afraid that no one will be there to welcome him when he comes back. I'm afraid that he'll feel uneasy and unfamiliar with this world when he comes back. I'm afraid that he'll forget the way home when he comes back. After all, it's already been 100 years. I hope that when he comes back, he can see the people he's most familiar with and take him home. Chapter 1468. Long time no see, Xiaolan. A warm smile appeared on Lin's face as he carefully brushed the snow off her shoulders and hair. His hands were still trembling slightly. We should hide the fact that we've returned. None of us are weak, and we might be able to turn the tides of this battle, Chun Chin suggested. However, everything had been covered in snow and ice, and the outline of an extremely massive crater could still be seen. Everything is fine except for you, and Lin replied in a gentle voice. None of them were idiots, and they could tell from the conversation between Su Xiaolan and the others that they were facing. Don't do that again. This room really did feel like home. Terrifying frost power instantly invaded his entire body, and he shuddered uncontrollably. Celestial Arch, even though we've worked together in the past, we're now enemies, Chun Chun said. It was snowing all year round. He extended a hand to try and brush the snow off Su Xiaolan's shoulders. No one in the world would be able to imagine that such a transcendent goddess who was revered by countless living beings would come to this bleak and desolate ice plain to wait for him day after day. All right, I promise I won't do that again. Within the bleak and desolate ice plain, a day in heaven equals a year on earth. The celestial arch murmured. You've been gone for 100 years. You heartless be *starred. Su Xiaolan continued to hurl abuse at Lin, as if she wanted to vent all of the resentment in her heart, and she clawed at Lin's back until it hurt. Through the window, he could see the flickering candlelight in the room, giving off a warm glow. The decorations were very exquisite, and it was very cozy. On the wall were a few photos of him and Xiaolan taken when they were free. In the photos, he and Xiaolan were very happy. She had a warm home to return to, but she chose to stand on this bleak and desolate ice plain. She exhaled lightly to form a cloud of white mist, as she blinked her clear eyes as she looked around at the bleak and desolate world, hoping for a miracle to happen. In the world that Lin entered before, 1 year is equivalent to 1 day in the heavenly god space. The Taichu continent was also a world within the image, so 1 year should be equivalent to 1 day in the heavenly god space. In essence, the flow of time in the world was the same. We are the ones who are different. The environment seems to have gotten worse. If cultivators below the deity transformation stage were to live here, they would probably freeze to death, right? And Lin mumbled, Yes, I'm sick. And Lin did not dare to make the woman in his arms angry, so he went along with her words. Su Xiaolan was not in the room, and Lin did not go in either. Yes, I'm a bastard. And Lin immediately admitted his irresponsible behavior. The wind and snow fell on her hair and shoulders. As if she had enough scolding, Xiaolan's soft and warm body no longer scratched people like a tigress. Instead, she sobbed softly like a kitten. Just like that. She raised her head and waited for the person who she didn't know would come back. Su Xiaolan's tone gradually softened. I really want to cut you down with my sword. Wu, how have you been during the past 100 years? Everything had been well during the past 100 years. So, they'd already been gone for 100 years. Every top-notch expert would have corresponding restraints and defensive measures against their enemies in battle. He looked around as if he were searching for something. The heaven-crushing sect and the heaven-mending sect were both trying to save the world, but their methods were completely different, so it would not be an exaggeration to refer to them as sworn enemies. An earth-shattering battle had taken place here 100 years ago. Wah! Su Xiaolan hugged Lin tightly as she sobbed. Didn't you say you were going to run if you couldn't beat them? Why didn't you run? Tell me, are you crazy? Let's go back to the Celestial Court. The Celestial Arch smiled. This was the smile of the second-in-command of the Heaven-Mending Sect. She stared blankly ahead, and her right hand trembled uncontrollably. Find her? Shangguan immediately realized who he was referring to. Didn't she tear open a spatial rift and leave this place? How are you going to find her? She could even feed me medicine, let alone kill me. No wonder this world had undergone such a drastic change. No wonder these prodigies' cultivation bases had improved so drastically. All of this could be explained by the passage of time. Lin surreptitiously surveyed his surroundings to find that the snow maidens had all disappeared, leaving behind a vast expanse of barren land. The woman who had waited alone for 100 years had finally found the man of her heart. The Celestial Arch, Chun Chun, Shangguan Yi, and the others all turned to look at Lin. Hearing this, everyone nodded their heads, obviously in agreement. Chun Chun's words made everyone's expressions change. Lan Lin's cabin. Su Xiaolan hadn't lost her composure like this for a long time, and she rubbed her eyes with her left hand, as if she was afraid that her eyes were playing tricks on her. I'm afraid you don't think so. A faint smile appeared on the Celestial Thearch's face. That direction seems to be where the heavenly time God self-detonated, right? That's also where I disappeared. And Lin slowly approached, only to discover that there was a very beautiful wooden cabin there. He suddenly didn't know how to face the woman before him, so he concealed his aura. The sword let loose a ringing sound as it hovered above Lin's neck. Tears welled up in Su Xiaolan's eyes as tears flowed from the corners of her eyes. She pursed her lips with an expression of aggrievement and excitement. In the end, she slammed her fist into Lin's chest. You bastard! Do you know how long I've waited for you? Whoosh, Shangguan Yi, the Great Empress, and Meng Ji all turned to look at Lin, as if they were very curious about his choice. Lin remained silent as he looked toward the vast expanse of empty space in the northeast. This place had already been transformed into a vast expanse of ice and snow. The two of them were locked in a tight embrace. When they appeared out of thin air, there was a very good chance that they would catch their enemies off guard, and Lin suddenly recalled that 100 years had already passed, and the heavenly time god had self-detonated, so everyone probably thought that he was already dead. I'm going back to the heaven-crushing sect as well. And Lin, do you want to come with me? Chun Chun extended an invitation. This was an invitation from the second-in-command of the heaven-crushing sect. In the southwestern region of the opposite shore realm, several dozen kilometers away, space was slowly torn apart. Mountains and rivers were severed, and violent energy seemed to be able to destroy everything. The Phoenix escorted the 200 executive department cultivators and 3 celestial immortals of the Celestial Court toward the southeast. They flew further and further away before disappearing into the distance. They had spent 100 days in a strange space within the heavenly time god's world, which meant that 100 years had passed on the Tai Chu continent. Although this was very shocking, it was the truth in front of them. 100 years. Everything was clear now. The dragon sparrow sword landed on the snowy ground. A graceful figure was leaning against a withered tree, quietly looking at the snowy world in the distance, looking at the empty world. Shangguan, he was a little aggrieved. I thought that the cultivation speed in that space was hundreds of times faster than in the Tai Chu continent, so we were the ones who benefited. Now that I think about it, isn't it more or less the same? Didn't we only stay in that strange space for 100 days? Meng Ji was also in a daze, as if she was struggling to accept this outcome. A white-clothed figure walked out quietly. His aura was completely restrained, as if he was afraid of alerting someone. The woman in the jade dress in the sky looked on as the red sun disappeared into the night sky before tearing open a spatial rift and disappearing into the distance. However, Su Xiaolan was still here. Chun Chun sighed with emotion. I should have thought of this a long time ago. Isn't the heavenly time God's space the true sky? And Lin made his way over to the woman in the jade dress and opened his mouth, but he felt as if there was a fishbone stuck in his throat. I know where she went. A warm smile appeared on Lin's face as he turned to bid farewell to everyone. Excuse me, I don't want her to wait for too long. There's a difference. It's not as tiring to cultivate there. Meng, Ji consoled everyone. You. A crisp voice intermingled with incredulity. A surge of warmth welled up in Lin's heart upon seeing this. Su Xiaolan seemed to have sensed something, and she suddenly turned around like a startled cat. Her dragon sparrow sword had already appeared in her hand, and she slashed it behind her with extreme sharpness. Couldn't you have come back earlier? You made me wait for so long. Soon, he discovered that there seemed to be a black figure within a massive crater. Su Xiaolan hugged him even tighter. Me too. Let's never be separated again. In this scene, the loneliness of her back was heart-wrenching. He made his way toward the center of the explosion and finally saw the figure that he had been searching for this entire time. Many things have happened now, so I think it's time for me to return to the Celestial Court, the Celestial Arch said. They hadn't seen each other for 100 days, but she had waited for him for 100 years. He stepped into the spatial gate as he spoke, leaving everyone staring at one another in bewilderment. And Lin was completely unable to imagine just how much pain and torment the woman in his arms had been subjected to. He surreptitiously made his way over to find a plaque hanging on the door of the house. The wind and snow were like blades, and the frosty air was like mist. The house was particularly eye-catching amid the barren snowy plains. I know, I'm sorry. And Lin rushed forward and held Su Xiaolan tightly in his arms, as if he were trying to make up for all the warmth that he had missed during these past few years. Chapter 1469. Within Lin's cabin. This is the house I built for you. I thought that once you came back and saw this house, you'd know that I was waiting for you here. Su Xiaolan held on to Lin's hand as they made their way into the cabin. I didn't think that you'd come back to the falling dragon abyss. And Lin sighed with emotion. But fate sure is a strange thing. I came back just in time for you to destroy the falling dragon abyss, so we're quite fated to meet. Su Xiaolan blinked as if a thought had occurred to her, and a smile suddenly appeared on her face. What do you think about seeing me fight on my phoenix? My only thought is that my wife is so powerful. And Lin replied with an honest expression. Su Xiaolan faltered slightly upon hearing this. How many years had it been since she had heard Lin speak so shamelessly? This long-lost yet familiar scene appeared once again. It was really nostalgic. Tears welled up in her eyes again as she wiped away the tears from the corners of her eyes in embarrassment. She had never thought that she would experience such a melancholic day. And Lin's heart throbbed at the sight of Su Xiaolan like this, and he gripped tightly onto her slender hand with an earnest expression. Xiaolan, if you still feel wronged, then beat me up to vent your anger. Su Xiaolan couldn't help but burst into laughter at the sight of Lin's serious expression. I'm so powerful now. I'm afraid that I'll accidentally kill you. And Lin was terrified. Xiaolan really was powerful now. Speaking of which, you're progressing way too quickly. Even though it's been 100 years, progressing from the return to void initial stage to the Tao integration stage within 100 years is still completely unheard of. And Lin was a little curious. The two of them sat down, and Su Xiaolan brewed some tea for them as they chatted. When Su Xiaolan saw the shock and envy in Lin's eyes, she couldn't help but feel a little proud in her heart. She smiled and said, "It's a long story. I also had many fortuitous encounters." Then, she began to tell her story of the past 100 years. The time was long, and the story was long. And Lin listened very intently. He listened to how Xiaolan had lived in his absence, how she had lived, and what she had done in the 100 years that he had been absent. In the past 10 years, Xiaolan lived a very ordinary life. She refused to believe that Lin had died just like that. She had placed the flame pavilion of the 4-9 immortal sect here, on this barren expanse of ice and snow. All he did every day was cultivate, teach his disciple, wait for Lin, cultivate, teach his disciple, wait for Lin, wait for Lin, wait for Lin, wait for Lin, wait for Lin. That was pretty much it. Perhaps it was due to the fact that she had been dealt a heavy blow, but her Tao heart became more and more clear. Her cultivation base progressed at a rapid pace, and she progressed to the return to void intermediate stage in just 10 years. After progressing to the return to void intermediate stage, her life didn't change much. She continued to cultivate, teach her disciple, and wait for Enlin. What was worth mentioning was that Su Xiaolan became Yi Ling's stand-in master. Yi Ling's aptitude was extremely fearsome, and she progressed to the soul formation stage at the age of 18 in just 11 years. When Yi Ling enrolled at Xiaoxin United University, she progressed to the soul formation stage as soon as she entered the university, creating a sensation throughout the entire university. She was a legendary figure of a new generation, and her master and his wife had almost all achieved the same things that they had achieved. She entered the university's Hall of Fame, took first place on the Immortal Rankings board for 5 years in a row, progressed to the Return to Void stage in her 4th year, and passed all 100 levels of the Immortal Spirit Tower. During those few years, it was as if she had been hacked. Almost all of the students refer to her as the #1 prodigy of a younger generation, and she was a legendary prodigy who was only inferior to Enlin and Su Xiaolan. On the night of her graduation, Yi Ling knelt in front of Enlin's statue in the university's Hall of Fame and cried for an entire night. Linger didn't bring shame to her master's face as she said this. She had always been very hardworking and had always been very diligent. She also told Enlin to rest assured that she wouldn't let him down. The corners of Enlin's lips twitched involuntarily upon hearing the words spirit in heaven. Su Xiaolan was a little amused upon seeing this. No one else knew about Yi Ling's actions, and she only discovered Yi Ling's little secret when she snuck up to her disciple's graduation ceremony, upon which she was touched for a very long time. In reality, there was one more thing that she didn't reveal to Enlin. That was, when Yi Ling was crying that night, she couldn't help but cry as well. After Yi Ling graduated, she waited for her master on the ice plains with her master's wife. Her rate of cultivation was very fast, even faster than that of Su Xiaolan and Enlin. However, a cow-nosed Taoist priest suddenly appeared one day. He was the Taoist priest who had guided Yi Ling to become Enlin's disciple. He said that Yi Ling's rate of cultivation was too fast and that she had to slow down or she would perish at the Tao integration stage. He didn't say that Yi Ling didn't have the aptitude to reach the Tao integration stage. All he said was that Yi Ling's Tao integration stage would be very unstable. Thus, Yi Ling's rate of cultivation slowed down, and she was still at the pinnacle of the return to void initial stage several decades later. Su Xiaolan's life was still very mundane. She cultivated, taught disciples, and waited for Enlin. The heavenly time God's death seemed to have affected the heavenly Tao greatly, and it fell silent for a very long time. During this period of time, the Taichu continent was very peaceful, and many prodigies emerged. Su Xiaolan and Yi Ling seemed to have fallen silent. Even though there were still rumors circulating about them, there was very little news of them stirring up trouble. 40 years after Enlin's disappearance, within the 4-9 immortal sex Phoenix small world, a divine flame burst into the sky. The Phoenix emerged from its shell. The proud Phoenix soared through the sky, refusing to submit to any living being. Su Xiaolan made her way over to the Phoenix and told it that she was Enlin's beast pet, Little Huang, and that it had to be obedient and not cause trouble. However, the Phoenix faltered slightly upon hearing that its name was Little Huang. It then spat out a mouthful of saliva with disdain, declaring that this name was trash and insulting its esteemed status. It even said that it didn't know who Enlin was. All of this proved that the beast pet contract had no effect on it. It was as if Enlin really had died. The Phoenix was like an unruly child, refusing to submit to anyone and wreaking havoc wherever it went. Su Xiaolan was enraged, and she immediately engaged in a battle with the Phoenix. The newborn Phoenix was only at the return to void stage, and it was quickly beaten to the ground by Su Xiaolan. After that, Su Xiaolan was wounded, and her blood made the little phoenix completely submit to her, and it cried and begged to sign a beast pet contract with Su Xiaolan. Su Xiaolan speculated that it was the essential power of the vermilion bird in her blood that had drawn the phoenix's interest, and she was able to easily tame it. Just like that, the phoenix Goldie inexplicably became her pet beast. The 4-9 immortal sex new phoenix created another massive stir on the Taichu continent. Su Xiaolan was quite indifferent to all of this, and she continued to cultivate, teach her disciples, beat up little Huang, and wait for Enlin. One day, the most terrifying change took place in heaven and earth.